Chapter 344. Chongzhou Shangyu County, Kanglin County. This place was adjacent to the northern border. The grain output of the north borderline was extremely low. Often, groups of horse bandits would rob houses, robbing gold, silver, jewelry, rice and livestock. If a slightly younger and more beautiful woman was caught, it would be even harder for her to escape the clutches of the devil. Qiguan Rang's mother had met with such a calamity. She had no choice but to bear him. However, at that time the northern borderline was still afraid of Dongqing's national power. When Qiguan Rang's mother was sent back, she was already 3 months pregnant. She had lost her virginity before marriage and was pregnant. The neighbors were gossiping about her, and her father and mother refused to acknowledge her. She could only grit her teeth and marry Qiguan Rang's father with tears in her eyes. After that, they settled in Shangyu County. This was a thing that happened more than 20 years ago. It was also the norm at that time. Therefore, there were many people like Qiguan Rang. The foreign tribes of the northern borderline refused to acknowledge their existence, and the people of Dongqing saw it as a disgrace. They were like rats in a bellows, suffering from both sides. Ever since the 3 cities in Shangyu County fell into the hands of the northern borderline, the lives of the people living in the border areas became more difficult. Every family closed their doors and windows, and women did not dare to show their faces. There were many horse bandits, and they came and went like the wind. They would leave immediately after a robbery and change places after a fight. It was impossible to catch them even if they wanted to. Everyone was in danger, and the common people were suffering unspeakably. However, this situation had improved slightly in recent years. In the past, no one dared to come to Chongzhou to be the prefecture magistrate, so the officialdom here was like a plate of loose sand. The officials, big and small, pretended to be deaf to the grievances of the people. A few years ago, Hu County Chief Lu Shi was promoted to Chongzhou's magistrate. The people finally had a backbone. After Lu Shi took office, he put in a lot of effort to eliminate the horse bandits. Originally, he wanted to do it step by step, but after asking for Jiang Pingji's opinion, he changed his mind. A bitch will be bitched by others. The northern borderline is shameless, so why should we give them face? Jiang Pingji replied to Lu Shi's letter with a sneer. I don't believe that these horse bandits are really horse bandits. How can ordinary horse bandits get so many high-quality horses? How could an ordinary bandit be so capable of figuring out the terrain and routes so clearly? Even if there were wild highwaymen, most of them were domesticated. If they commit a crime and get caught, it's better to say that it was done by the horse bandits than by the northern borderline army. On the contrary, killing the horse bandits was a better crime than killing the soldiers of the northern borderline. The 3 tribes of the northern borderline did not have the face to plead for the horse bandits. After careful consideration, Lu Shi accepted Jiang Pingji's suggestion. If he caught one, he would kill one. If he caught a pair, he would kill a pair. Once the horse bandits were caught, they would be killed regardless of their crimes. All the prefectures and counties had posted official announcements, asking the commoners to immediately report any traces of horse bandits. If the report was true, there would be a handsome reward. As the saying goes, everything is difficult at the beginning. When this order was first issued, it didn't have much effect. The horse bandits did not care about these orders, and the people at the border did not dare to trust the government, so the pace of eliminating the horse bandits was stagnant. Coincidentally, at that time, Qiguan Rang brought his newlywed wife back to Shangyu County to pay their respects to their mother's soul. As soon as he heard about this, he put forward his own suggestion. Qiguan Rang said, Chongzhou has been without a leader for a long time. The people's hearts are like scattered sand, and they are suspicious of the government. If we want to gather them again, it will naturally take a lot of effort. In the previous dynasty there was Tumu Lisan. Why don't you follow his example? Perhaps there will be progress. Tumu Lisan? Lu Shi's heart was suddenly enlightened. He arranged for people to prepare for this. As long as the commoners saw that someone reported the horse bandits and received tangible benefits, it would be the most powerful propaganda. After some preparation, there was progress slowly. The days of the horse bandits became more difficult. Lu Shi's execution method for the horse bandits was very uniform. Kill them and keep the horses. After catching a few groups of horse bandits, Lu Shi discovered that other than a small number of inferior horses, the rest were all well-trained horses. Just as Jiang Pingji said, how could ordinary horse bandits get such good horses? Therefore, the identity of the horse bandits was on the verge of being revealed. Lu Shi saw through it but didn't say anything. He followed the prescribed order. He killed those who deserved to be killed and captured those who deserved to be captured. He hung their heads in public. Even if the officials of the northern borderline were as black as the bottom of a pot, he pretended that he didn't see it. After more than a year, the atmosphere in the borderline counties of the northern borderline had changed. Even though it wasn't stable and wealthy, it was much better than the days of trembling with fear in the past. Qiguan Rang brought his wife to visit his deceased mother's grave and paid a visit to his master. From his master, he heard the news that the daughter of the Lu residence's mistress had married into the royal family. The daughter of the Lu residence's mistress has married into the royal family? Hearing the news, Qiguan Rang's feather fan paused and his expression changed slightly. He had started to grow a beard. Coupled with his gloomy appearance, he looked older than his actual age. Qiguan Rang's master nodded and said, "Some people mentioned this happy event a few days ago. They all expressed their desire to send some local products to the governor's manor. In the past, the people feared the government like wolves, but now they were happy because of the wedding of the Lu governor's daughter." It showed how popular Lu Shi was. Of course, it wasn't that Lu Shi did a good job, but he did a better job than his predecessor. At this time, Qiguan Rang asked again, raising his eyebrows slightly. His master asked, "Do you think it's inappropriate?" Qiguan Rang had always regarded his master as his biological father and told him everything he knew. "It's very inappropriate. I'm afraid Lu Langjun is in trouble," Qiguan Rang said. "Shangjing is now a dangerous place. I'm afraid he won't be able to return." These days, Qiguan Rang and his master talked about the world and analyzed the situation in Dongqing the most. Hearing Qiguan Rang's words, his master's heart skipped a beat and he said in surprise, "You mean, I'm afraid so?" Qiguan Rang nodded. His master frowned and said, "I remember you once said that the Lu residence has treated you with kindness. Is there a way to resolve this?" "No." Qiguan Rang suddenly smiled. "Although Shangjing is dangerous, it can't trap Lu Langjun. However, teacher's words have reminded your disciple of something. Time is tight. I have to leave in a few days. I can't be filial by your side." "What is it?" Qiguan Rang's master asked casually. Qiguan Rang said, "I promised someone to help him when he needed it the most. Now the time is coming." Time. The day Shangjing falls is the day the time comes. 2 flowers bloomed, one on each side. With the protection of 5,000 guards, the wedding procession sent the bride to Shangjing in peace. After so many years, this place is still so lively and prosperous. So many years have passed but nothing has changed. She seemed to be lamenting, but in fact she was talking to the audience in the live broadcast room. "Tudu Feiqiu, I suddenly remembered my hometown. I went out to study in my 4th year of university. When I returned home after graduation, I almost couldn't recognize the road. I can only lament the rapid development of society and the changes of the times. My hometown is changing day by day. Lao Ciji Lianming, #cheeks. This is normal. Ancient times were a farming society. Productivity was very weak. This is an indisputable fact." Chapter 345. Jiang Pingji rode on White's back. Behind her, many cooks carried the dowry into the city. Both sides were guarded by mighty guards. This scene aroused the curiosity of the people in Shangjing. More and more people gathered on both sides of the street to watch the commotion. Small discussions could be heard. "So much dowry. Which noble family's daughter is getting married?" They had been watching the commotion for so long. The dowry was carried one after another as if there was no end. "Oh my, even the princess of the northern borderline who married into the royal family a few years ago did not bring so much dowry. Hey, aren't you well informed? You're known as the know-it-all in Shangjing. Haven't you heard anything?" The people discussed. Most of them were shocked at the amount of dowry. A small portion of them were curious about which family's daughter was marrying to such an extent. With so much dowry, it was as if the entire family's fortune had been emptied. In the eyes of the people, even if the emperor married off his daughter, he would not be able to bring out so many good things. The discussions of the people reached the ears of Lu Huan, the daughter of a concubine in the Lu residence. She could not suppress her smile and joy. As the daughter of a concubine who had no sense of existence in the Lu residence, she had never thought that one day she would become the center of attention and be envied by so many. She clenched the handkerchief in her hand and took a deep breath. She suppressed the surging emotions in her heart. They had only just arrived in Shangjing. When she became the fourth princess consort, not only the people of Shangjing, but the people of the world would also know her. Without waiting for her to calm down, an even more agitated voice came from outside. Lu Huan listened attentively. Her face gradually became gloomier and darker. On the other side, Jiang Pingji heard the commotion and could not help but turn her head to look. She saw a carriage in the middle of the procession suddenly attract the attention of many people. Some even took off their perfume sachets and threw them into the carriage. Some young men's faces were flushed red. They looked as if they had met a beauty. They wanted to go forward and ask questions, but they also wanted to be reserved. Their expressions were very contradictory. Looking closely, it turned out that the curtain of the carriage was lifted slightly, revealing a stunning beauty with a celestial appearance. A cool breeze blew. There was an indescribable fragrance in the air, intoxicating one's mind. Unfortunately, the beauty only appeared for a moment. When the curtain of the carriage fell, many people felt their hearts empty as if they had lost a love. Seeing that, Jiang Pingji suddenly smiled and tugged on the reins. White snorted unhappily, but it still turned its head obediently and carried Jiang Pingji to the back. She asked, "Why did Huijun lift the curtain just now?" "Your servant was only curious about Shangjing City and wanted to know how prosperous this place was. I was careless and broke the rules. Please forgive me, Langjun." When the people heard Jiang Pingji riding her horse forward, they thought that she was going to reprimand Huijun. They could not help but tense up. Soon after, he heard the clear and melodious voice of a girl that sounded like a lark's and thought of that peerlessly perfect face. One by one he was completely intoxicated. "So that's how it is. Then it doesn't matter if you lift the curtain and take a good look. Before we get married, this is the only time we can be at ease." Jiang Pingji openly agreed. After getting permission, Huijun got her maids to roll up the curtains on both sides of the carriage. A pair of beautiful eyes slightly glanced at both sides of the street. A few years ago, these places were unattainable places of bliss for her. Her filthy body was not worthy of stepping into them. Now with such an identity she sat in the carriage openly. The people who passed by sighed in admiration because of her appearance. Because of Huijun's actions, the originally orderly people suddenly became chaotic. There were even more enthusiastic people who chased after the carriage and threw perfume sachets. "Oh my, is this what a newlywed looks like? She's really peerless in the world. I can't forget her after one look. Even a fairy's daughter is nothing more than this." As soon as these words came out, someone immediately retorted. That person knew more about the rules. Looking at her, she's definitely not a newlywed. The carriage in front is bigger and more luxurious than this one. The person sitting inside is the real one. Not a newlywed? Then who could it be? She should be the accompanying bride, right? I heard from the scholar at the entrance of the village that all rich and powerful families have this kind of stupid rule. They prepare a few maids for their daughters and send them all to serve their son-in-law. They say it's some kind of spoiling. Don't you think this is a shame? How can there be people who cheat their daughters like this? But why are they called rich and powerful? When the surrounding people heard this, they immediately revealed expressions of disbelief. Tiske is the accompanying bride. Then this son-in-law is really rich. Marrying a woman and getting 4 to 5 bed-warming maids. This accompanying bride is so beautiful. Aren't they afraid that she will steal the son-in-law's soul? Who knows, maybe their daughter is even more beautiful. As soon as these words came out, an unscrupulous hooligan suddenly chuckled, revealing a trace of a wretched smile. From what I see, this family probably has a grudge against the son-in-law. The daughter is already beautiful, and the accompanying bride is also like a fairy's daughter. If this son-in-law sees them, how can his legs walk? He won't want to lie on them all day long and refuse to come down. After a long time, who can stand it? I guess after a few months of indulgence he'll definitely be squeezed dry by these women. The married woman blushed when she heard these filthy words. She spat fiercely while the man showed an expression of approval. If their wives were so beautiful and they married 4 to 5 fairies, they felt that they wouldn't be able to stand it. The contents of the commoners' discussion were mostly related to Huijun. These conversations also faintly reached the ears of the concubine's daughter, Lu Huan. She was so angry that she tore 2 handkerchiefs. Her eyes revealed an ominous glint. Her entire face was distorted due to anger and jealousy. She looked repulsive like a yiksha. It was hard to imagine that this was actually an innocent 12-year-old girl. Tenli of red makeup was famous in Shangjing. On this day, two pieces of news spread throughout Shangjing as if they had grown wings. First, the future fourth princess consort had an extraordinary status. Tenli of red makeup crushed the second princess consort. That was the princess of the northern borderline. Second, the accompanying bride was extremely beautiful. Many young scholars saw her and fell in love with her at first sight. Since then they couldn't sleep at night. In addition, someone found out that Hui Jun was the accompanying bride of the Lu residence's concubine's daughter. He hurriedly ordered a servant to send a greeting card. No matter how expensive the Lu residence's ransom was, as long as they could take Hui Jun as a concubine, they would definitely cherish her and treat her like a treasure. To put it bluntly, the accompanying bride was a maid who warmed the bed and helped the master solidify his favor. As long as the master was unwilling to relent, she would never have a proper title for the rest of her life. Wouldn't being a concubine be better than this? Some were smarter. They directly used scented floral paper to write poems about their love, in order to probe Huijun's opinion. Whether it was the former or the latter, Huijun politely rejected them. It was regrettable, but they couldn't bring themselves to hate her. Seeing this, Jiang Pingji couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Chapter 346. The Lu residence had its own property and mansion in Shangjing. The wedding procession stopped there. Lu Huan, the concubine's daughter, was also preparing to get married from there. Arranging the dowry, tidying up the mansion, arranging the servants. Jiang Pingji's time was almost completely occupied by the tedious tasks. When she finally had some free time, it was already 2 days later. Jiang Pingji was a person who could not sit still. She would not be able to sit still if she stayed at home all day reading and writing. Not to mention her, the audience in the live broadcast room could not watch such boring content every day, so they all begged for a change of map. Jiang Pingji was moved by the audience's suggestions. She remembered that the last time she was there was 2 or 3 years ago. At that time it was late autumn and early winter. There was nothing much to see in the surroundings. Moreover, the schedule was rushed, so Jiang Pingji did not have much time to stroll around Shangjing. She felt rather regretful. Now that he had free time, he might as well enjoy himself for a few days. He might not have such a good opportunity in the future. As the saying goes, it's better to be happy together than to be happy alone. She simply called Su Ku, who was also bored, and the two of them teamed up to go out. Su Ku had a helpless look on his face. He couldn't help but tease. Langjun, you move your mouth, but your subordinates run around until their legs break. You are free and don't have to worry about anything, but I still have a lot of chores to deal with. It's better for you to enjoy yourself. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows. The things that should be done have been done. What else do you have on hand? Suka shook his head. There were some things that Langjun didn't remember, but as his right-hand man he had to be considerate and considerate. Have you forgotten, Langjun? Master has many good friends in Shangjing. Some of them are friends in the officialdom and some are close friends in private. As Master's son, it's rare for you to come here. Naturally, I have to prepare a meager gift and send a visiting card to each of them. Although he might not meet Jiang Pingji, the necessary etiquette could not be neglected. How could Jiang Pingji know who Lu Shi's friends were in the government, or who he befriended in private? She didn't even know who he gave his New Year's gifts to. After all, those were things that only the legal wife or the head housekeeper could handle. Although Su Ku was not the housekeeper, Jiang Pingji did not bring anyone with her this time, so the task of socializing was thrown to him. Jiang Pingji thought about it and felt a little guilty. Is this very troublesome? Su Ku said, every family has its own taboo and gift-giving is also a particular art. Give more to those who are close to you and you also need to put in a lot of effort to prepare the gifts. For those who are slightly distant, you can reduce some of the gifts according to your discretion, but you can't let the other party see your true attitude. Not only do you have to refer to the previous years, but you also have to understand the situation of each family in recent years and make adjustments to the contents of the gifts. If a family had just lost a child, wouldn't it be like poking a sore thumb if they hurried to send some gifts with the meaning of a Qilin sending a child? Another example would be that someone's parents had just passed away. Sending some supplements that could prolong the life of an elderly person was just courting death. Giving gifts would not bring the two families closer, but if they gave the wrong gift, they would become enemies and never interact with each other again. Jiang Pingji understood. She understood these principles. Father has been an official for many years. Although he doesn't have friends all over the world, he definitely has a lot of friends. It seems that this is indeed a big project. Fortunately, she had pulled Suku over. Otherwise, she would definitely have a headache if this matter was left in her hands. Seeing Jiang Pingji's frightened expression, Suku smiled and casually said, "In another 2 years, Lang Jun should be at the age to get married and start a career. When that time comes, you will marry a virtuous and capable mistress. Someone will take care of these trivial matters for you." Jiang Pingji listened and did not say a word. Marrying a virtuous and capable mistress was a little difficult for Suku to achieve. Suku was going to be disappointed. The audience in the streaming room burst into laughter. Lao Siji Lianming, my heart aches for young Suku. The streamer may marry a male mistress in the future. Kaitang Daffin Auntie, actually I don't mind the streamer marrying a female mistress of a normal gender. Jugu Chitsi, am I the only one who feels sorry for young Suku? He has known the streamer for so many years and has been betrayed by the streamer so many times, but he still firmly believes that the streamer is a man. He even wants to marry a mistress. Be careful that your Langjun will be married one day. Bingtang Lemon, I don't like what you said. My streamer will definitely marry that one. I will stand by the streamer and accept the mistress. Jiang Pingji ignored the densely packed bullet screens in the streaming room and sighed at Suku. It's still too early to start a family. I don't plan on thinking about it now. Jiang Pingji did not wait for Suku to reply. She said, now I'll have to trouble you to continue worrying about it. You go ahead with your work. I'm going out to play. Suku did not know what she said, but he actually changed his mind. Langdon, wait. I've thought about it carefully. I'll go out with you. Jiang Pingji smiled and asked him, why did you suddenly change your mind? Suku said expressionlessly, I suddenly remembered that you are unrestrained and unrestrained. If I don't keep an eye on you, who knows what trouble you will cause when you go out. When that time comes, I will have to deal with the aftermath. I think it's better to go with you. Jiang Pingji was speechless. She had nothing to say about this reason. She did not dare to look at the bullet screens in the streaming room that were laughing at her. Tudu Feichio, streamer, young Suku thinks that you are a troublemaker. Jug Chestnut, bah. Do I need young Suku to think that the streamer is a troublemaker? Then you keep an eye on me, Jiang Pingji said unhappily. Look at you. It's as if your Langjun likes to cause trouble. Suku returned a look. Jiang Pingji did not need to read the bullet screens to understand the meaning of that look. What he meant wasn't that the case? Suku had seen through Jiang Pingji's nature, a troublemaker. Even if she did not take the initiative to cause trouble, there would always be accidents. Not to mention what would happen if she took the initiative to cause trouble. Perhaps it was because the second princess was born in the northern borderline, but there were many exotic shops in Shangjing. The night market was bustling with activity. The people brought their children with them and enjoyed the company of their families. Suku was confused by the bustling scene. It was as if everything he saw along the way was an illusion. Do you want to buy some cosmetics, jewelry, or silk flowers? Jiang Pingji was dressed like a rich young master, but she had an outstanding appearance and a tall figure. She was quite eye-catching in the crowd. Why do you want to buy these girly things? Suku asked. Chapter 347. Suku was speechless as if he really hadn't thought about it. He wanted to say that it was how it was between a husband and wife, but he couldn't bring himself to say it. Did you not bring any money with you and you confiscated it? Jiang Pingji asked. Of course I brought it. Suku subconsciously touched the money pouch on his waist and asked, why did I have to confiscate it? Jiang Pingji didn't explain. Instead she said, when I was in Langyi I met a woodcutter. He chopped firewood for 15 days a month, and the rest of the time he peddled the pancake stall his wife made for him on the street. I chatted with him for a while, and after our conversation I realized that he actually thought that the biggest amount of money was copper coins. Suku was suspicious and didn't understand. It's hard for ordinary people to make a living. Most of their money is copper coins. It's not strange. Jiang Pingji shook her head. That's not the case. After I continued to ask, I found out that the woodcutter's family wasn't poor. They could save 4 or 5 taels of silver a year. After years of hard work, they even prepared 20 taels of silver for their daughter's dowry. The woodcutter only recognized copper coins because he usually gave his money to his wife. His wife was afraid that he was a spendthrift, so she gave him 3 copper coins a day. Suku was speechless. If he still didn't understand what she was saying, then there must be something wrong with his brain. Xuanmei isn't that kind of person. Although Suku always thought that women were in charge of the inside and men were in charge of the outside, he never thought that he would only have 3 copper coins a day. That was too miserable. Yes, so why don't you buy some trinkets if you have money? Suku was confused again. His expression was conflicted. I'll buy them. If he didn't buy them, wouldn't he be admitting that he was the woodcutter in the story who only had 3 copper coins a day? How could a man be held hostage by his wife like that? As a result, 2 men dressed in rich clothes appeared in front of many stalls, and they were all buying little things that girls loved to use. Suku looked at them with a conflicted expression. Jiang Pingji, who was beside him, was carefully choosing her rouge and face powder. It seemed that she was quite knowledgeable. Wait, since when did his Langjun have such a weird hobby? Not all rouge and face powder can be used. If you give the box of rouge you just picked to Xuanmei, I'm sure her face will be covered in red beans the next day. Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes. If it's more serious, you might have to find a new wife. Xuanmei had some allergies. The color of the rouge that Suku picked looked good, but it contained allergens that Ku was allergic to. At first, Suku didn't think much of it, but after listening to the latter part of the conversation he quickly put the box back. Langjun, he said of it. Even though he knew that Xuanmei was once Jiang Pingji's personal maid and that the relationship between master and servant was close, as Xuanmei's husband, it was impossible for Suku to not care about another man, who knew his wife very well. Well, when I was young I was always sick and had to drink medicine to recuperate. I had to think of ways to please them. Jiang Pingji heard the jealousy in Suku's words. Jiang Pingji could hear the jealousy in Suku's words, but she pretended not to understand and explained in a roundabout way. After all, they were newlyweds and she could not make things difficult for them. However, there was one time when I almost made a big mistake. I gave the wrong gift. Later I found out that Xuanmei couldn't touch that kind of thing. Since then I've remembered it. When Suku heard this, the grudge in his heart disappeared. Instead he became a little more interested. Learning about Xuanmei from Jiang Pingji felt like he was trying to please his brother-in-law and understand his wife's past. I don't know about it. I've never heard Xuanmei talk about it. Suku paused. He didn't know much about Xuanmei's past. They knew each other before marriage, but they didn't know much about each other. If he wanted his marriage to last, he had to know more about her in the future. At least he couldn't make a mistake like giving the wrong gift. Jiang Pingji said, "There's plenty of time in the future." Her conversation with Suku was presented to the audience in the streaming room. Many of them vaguely understood her intention. Tudu Feichio, #propping chin. It's been a few years, but I still think the streamer is very gentle. Xuanmei and Suku weren't married blindly, but they knew very little about each other. Plus, they didn't spend much time together, so there were many hidden dangers. Even a loving couple couldn't stand such torture. The streamer was slowly guiding Suku to understand Xuanmei. She avoided a lot of problems. I have a pair of skateboarding shoes. She's gentle, but don't you think it's inappropriate for a woman to interact with a newlywed man for a long time? Xuanmei knows the streamer's gender. Wouldn't she mind? The bullet screen was vague, but anyone who understood could understand what she was talking about. She was worried that the streamer would become the third party in their marriage. Bingtang Lemon, please. The streamer is young Suku's master now. Their relationship is that of a superior and subordinate. I've never heard that a female superior can't talk to a married male subordinate. If that's the case, I might as well not hire married male subordinates in the future. The streamer was still a man to the public. They didn't say anything ambiguous. Felt like they were normal friends. He had a lot to worry about. No matter what the audience in the streaming room thought, Suku, a smart man, gradually understood Jiang Pingji's good intentions. The master and the servant chatted on and off. They talked about both business and personal matters. Only a few of them were related to Xuanmei. Most of them were trivial matters. Before they knew it, they had walked through more than half of the night market. Suka's legs were sore from walking. Seeing that he looked weak, Jiang Pingji pointed to the tea house next to her. Why don't you go upstairs and rest? Suka didn't force her. He nodded. However, if he knew what would happen if he went upstairs, he wouldn't go upstairs even if he had to walk until his legs broke. Instead of calling it a tea house, it was more like an elegant place frequented by literati. As soon as they walked into the hall, the air was filled with a fragrant aroma. There was also the sound of stringed instruments in their ears. The owner of this tea house is quite smart. He even invited a musician to play music to liven things up. It looks quite elegant. Jiang Pingji looked around and found that there were paintings and calligraphy hanging on the doors of the private rooms. They were of different levels, but they looked quite interesting when placed together. That wasn't important. What was important was that the medium of the paintings and calligraphy was very valuable. Bamboo paper was nothing in the Lu residence, but it was said to be as valuable as gold outside. Only rich families would use it. Chapter 348. A tea house was naturally a place for drinking tea. All the tea houses in the world were basically the same. If one wanted to stand out from the others, he had to have his own unique style. The tea house in front of him was undoubtedly the leader of the same industry. After the development of diversified projects, people could not only drink tea, but they could also watch beautiful dancers and taste high-quality wine. When the literati were in a good mood, they could also write in the hall, show off their calligraphy or show off their painting skills. From time to time they would hold poetry meetings and invite famous people from all over the world to enjoy it. Of course, it was not easy to invite real famous people. Therefore, the tea house settled for the next best thing. Although the famous people they invited were not famous, they were indeed talented. Suka calmly talked with the servant girl for a while and figured out the daily activities of the tea house. He suddenly became interested. Whether the tea house is boasting or putting on a show, the brush, ink, paper and inkstone they provide are all of high quality. Jiang Pingji and Suku picked a quiet room and sat opposite each other. The tea stove was already emitting a fragrance. The room was clean and tidy. There were paintings of high quality hanging on the wall, and most of the people who signed them were of high status. This alone is enough to attract many talented scholars. Although Jiang Pingji used bamboo paper to practice calligraphy, it seemed that it was a common thing, but in fact, in Suka's words, his Langjun did not practice calligraphy on bamboo paper, but on pieces of golden paper, pure gold. Due to the limited production, the rarer something was, the more expensive it was. The price of bamboo paper in the outside world was not something that ordinary poor families could afford. Even if it was a noble family, only those with high status and excellent academic performance were qualified to use it. Suka had been in the Lu's house for many years, so he had naturally been influenced by what he saw and heard. The ink provided by the tea house was the best Meng ink from Zhangzhou. The brush used was also an extremely expensive brush. As for the paper, Hejian bamboo paper was famous in the 9 prefectures, and its price was as high as its reputation. As for the inkstone, it was still the best of the best. Brush, ink, paper and inkstone were gathered together. How could ordinary people provide them? Let alone a tea house. I wonder who's behind this tea house. If it was in the past, Suku would definitely be attracted by this kind of extravagance. Bamboo paper was the dream of many scholars, but now, his monthly allowance was an entire knife of bamboo paper, so he didn't care about this. This tea house doesn't look like a place for drinking tea. Let's not talk about other things, just the value of that brush, ink, paper and inkstone. At this point, Suka shook his head. How was this drinking tea at a small price? It was clearly drinking gold and silver. That's why I said that the rich man behind them either has a hole in his brain, or he's rich and overbearing, or he's ambitious. Jiang Pingji smiled as she concocted a cup of tea for herself. After drinking it for so many years, she was used to adding various spices to her tea. Xiaoyu, what do you think it is? Suka said, Langjun, you've underestimated me with this question. No matter how the times change, the nature of the merchants in the world will never change. All the hustle and bustle in the world is for profit, and all the hustle and bustle in the world is for profit. Since they were willing to put in so much effort and invest so much money, they naturally had something in mind, and it was something big. It's just that I don't know which royal relative this owner is. If he wasn't a royal relative or an important minister, who had the qualifications to open a tea house in the best area of Shangjing, Even if he was qualified to open a tea house, the number of people who had the financial resources to keep the tea house running could be counted on one's fingers. After a while, the two of them thought of the same goal. They looked at each other and smiled. Jiang Pingji said, "I took a look at the hall downstairs just now. Some of the paintings and calligraphy works hanging on the ceiling have a prominent background, while others are unknown or have the advantage of having a surname based on their ancestors' reputation." The few types of people that Jiang Pingji mentioned were nothing more than two types: the aristocratic families and the commoners. The proportion of the former was not large, while the proportion of the latter was quite high. The aristocratic families relied on their fathers and ancestors, and they could easily rise to the top. Even if they were lonely, they would still be respected and admired by the people. Most of them came to the tea house to have fun and relax. Even if they left their brush and ink, it was only on a whim. The commoners were different. There were too few opportunities for them to stand out, and the tea house provided a rather good platform. Even if they could not make a name for themselves, leaving behind their best brush and ink to compete with others would make them feel happy. Jiang Pingji took a look around and vaguely discovered the plan behind the tea house. "If I'm not mistaken, it should be Prince Changshu," Suku said calmly. "I guess it's him too." When the assessment was near, he invited all the scholars to participate in the poetry gathering. He also generously lent the hot spring house under his name to entertain the scholars for free. His intention to rope them in was obvious. Jiang Pingji snorted. His fief Xianxia is rich in resources and the people are rich. The aristocratic families that support him are also rich. Spending some money to build a small tea house is just a drop in the bucket for him. The tea house gave the vast number of scholars a fair platform to display their talents. Regardless of whether they were from an aristocratic family or a commoner, they could enjoy the brush, ink, paper and inkstones here. No matter what kind of schemes they had in mind, at the very least he had indeed provided them with tangible benefits. Even if he couldn't get a student with astonishing talent and potential, he had still earned a good impression from the young scholars. If his luck was off the charts and he managed to get one of them, then he would have made a huge profit. In the current era where communication technology was extremely backward, a strategist who could determine the outcome of a battle was comparable to thousands of troops and horses. No one was a fool. Prince Changshu was naturally willing to do such a profitable business. Of course, that was what Jiang Pingji and Suku could see. As for whether other ordinary people could see it, it was unknown. When the servant girl brought the tea ingredients over, Jiang Pingji asked nonchalantly. The tea house was indeed a property under Prince Changshu's name. Seeing that, she could only secretly shake her head. Prince Changshu's ambition was so obvious. The one in Xiangyang Palace was still living a befuddled life, wishing that he could die in a pile of women. The difference between brothers was so obvious. They must not have been born from the same womb. Jiang Pingji took a sip of tea. The taste was memorable. "It's really good tea. I hope the tea is not expensive. Otherwise, I can only pawn you here and find a chance to escape." While drinking, she suddenly sighed with emotion. Suku almost choked on the tea in his mouth. She was about to tease Suku, but the tip of her ear twitched. She hurriedly put down the teacup and signaled Suku to stop coughing with her eyes. He could only cover his mouth with difficulty. He choked until the corners of his eyes turned red and there were pitiful physiological tears. What's wrong?" After a long while he recovered and asked Jiang Pingji what happened. Jiang Pingji said calmly, "There's movement next door." Chapter 349. He was even more convinced that it was not trouble that came to his Langjun, but that he was a troublemaker. He thought about it and left his original position. He moved to the corner of the room with the sofa in his hand and continued to sit there. Jiang Pingji was speechless. She lowered her voice and asked, "Why did you drag the sofa here?" Suku rolled his eyes and said, "It's comfortable." The two of them were speechless. They did not expect each other to be such a person. They must have been blind before. How could Suku's hearing be as good as Jiang Pingji's? He could only stick his ear to the wall and the sound on the other side gradually became clearer. Although a gentleman should not listen to indecent things, Suku was not a gentleman in the strict sense. His Langjun was openly eavesdropping. Why should he be reserved? The noise in the tea house was very good. If he did not deliberately raise his voice, the two private rooms on the other side would not be able to hear anything at all. When the sound became clear, Suku heard a series of ear-scratching noises and some flapping sounds. Suku was speechless. If it was before the wedding, he might have been confused for a while. But he was a new driver with a driver's license, so he suddenly saw the light. So, there were two demons fighting in the opposite private room and they were leaning against the wall? Suku's face alternated between red and green, white and black. It was as colorful as a palette that had been overturned. He looked at his Langjun strangely. She looked a little interested and raised her eyebrows. It was obvious that she was listening to him with great interest. Suku lowered his voice and said, "Don't listen to indecent things." Jiang Pingji's expression said it all. This guy knew what was going on next door. He was not ignorant. "Don't be noisy. Don't disturb me." Jiang Pingji just waved her hand and slapped Suku's hand away. Poor Suku. He was distressed by the audience in the streaming room again. His fans even formed a group to send him flowers and gifts. "Yualuo Wuti, I can't take it anymore. My stomach hurts from laughing. Zhou Xian, I laughed so hard that I spat out the biscuit in my mouth. The streamer is really tireless. I feel that Suku is so angry that he has lost a few years of his life. I hope the King of Hell will feel sorry for him and extend his life. Lao Siji Lianmeng, bringing my subordinates to listen to the sex next door. Streamer, you're the best at messing with your master. I'm impressed. In Yueja Zhugachinma. This group of people only knows how to ha. I feel like this scene is very familiar. Déjà vu. The audience was dumbfounded. Was there a similar scene? Although the live broadcast room's upper limit had been increased to 150,000 viewers, it did not reduce the difficulty of grabbing a spot. Apart from those who were ridiculed as holdouts living in the signal station, it was very difficult for others to get a spot in the live broadcast room. Who knew what the host's daily routine had been like in the past few years? Wasn't it strange for her to suddenly say something like, déjà vu? However, there were many talented people in the livestream room, so there were indeed people who knew about it. Lao Siji Lianmeng. Oh, I remember. The streamer met the princess of the northern borderline in Wumajun Tsk. I still have the recording of that time. Not to mention anything else, the northern borderline princess's voice was indeed professional. In Yueja Zhugachinma. Correct. However, Jiang Pingji was the only one listening at that time. Now there was a new driver who had just gotten his driver's license. Suku. Jiang Pingji relied on her excellent hearing to hear the movements and conversations next door, but the audience in the live broadcast room did not need to. As long as they turned up the volume, they could easily hear the moaning and panting sounds of cats scratching people, as well as the indescribable slapping sounds. Suku felt very awkward when he saw that. He could not sit still. Jiang Pingji saw him like that and glared at him. She asked in a low voice, "Is there a worm on the cushion you're sitting on? Don't move around and listen carefully." Suku suddenly felt that his worldview was shattered again. Jiang Pingji said again, "The person opposite is an old acquaintance." She gestured for and made a gesture of the north. Suku understood and his eyes widened. He did not care about anything else and continued to listen to the movements opposite. The two of them were lucky. The person opposite had messed around a few times before. At that moment, the clouds had dispersed and the rain had stopped. Fourth Lang is really ruthless. Princess Inyaina's face was flushed. Her jade-like body had long matured and was curvaceous in all the right places. There were some thin sweat and ambiguous traces on her skin. It was not difficult to guess how intense the battle was just now. "You're about to marry your lovely bride, but I didn't expect you to have the time to have a rendezvous with me here. Don't you think that doing this is very painful for the fourth princess consort?" Wumajun hugged Princess Inyaina, his second sister-in-law, who was leaning toward him. With his other hand he grabbed her slender fingers that were poking his chest. He brought them close to his lips and took a whiff. He sneered and said, "I only married her to rope in the magistrate of Chongzhou. She's just a decoration. How can she be compared to you? You're my sweetheart, my lifeblood. She's just a commodity that's not even qualified to warm my bed. Why, are you jealous?" And Yaina panted and calmed the passion that had yet to subside in her body. She raised her hand to straighten her clothes and tucked her hair behind her ears. She said, "You're really fickle. She's your wife after all. You're still my second sister-in-law." In other words, if he was not a fickle person, how could he have touched his second brother's wife and maintained a relationship with her in private for a few years? But Yaina is the most special. I don't care how fickle I am to outsiders, but you're the wife I've acknowledged. You're the other half of my bloodline. You'll share the world with me in the future. Jun looked a little gloomy. No one wanted his woman to be another man's legitimate wife. As for the daughter of the Lu family's mistress, you can do whatever you want with her in the future. Yaina raised her eyebrows and leaned in his arms. She asked, "Can I be a human swine?" He had already guessed the identities of the two people next door from their conversation. He could not help but secretly glance at Jiang Pingji. However, his Langjun was not angry. Even her expression did not change. She was extremely cold. A human swine. Jun suddenly laughed. The laughter that came from his throat sounded very mellow. Not to mention a human swine. Even if you want to throw her into a basin, tie her up and roast her, anything is fine as long as you like it. You're so vicious. Princess Yaina chuckled. You're vicious too. The husband follows the wife. Of course I want to be vicious too. After he finished speaking, Jun put his hand into her loose collar. The two of them were about to roll into a ball again. Stop it. You're not serious. Every time you see me you're always thinking about such things. Princess Yaina pushed him away coquettishly. She got up and tidied up her clothes. Although it's quiet and safe here, I can't guarantee that I won't expose myself. Your second brother has been watching me carefully. Don't go overboard. Jun's face darkened when he heard her mention his second brother. Don't worry. This is my uncle's place. Don't you know best whether it's safe or not? Prince Changshe was also aware of the matter between Jun and Princess Yaina. Not only did he know, but he also provided a good place for them to meet. Why are you so stupid? How can your Uncle Wang believe everything? Princess Yaina pouted coquettishly and rolled her eyes at him. Jun was not angry. Instead he was a little restless. The evil fire that he had just suppressed rushed up again. Aren't you afraid that he'll spill the beans? What's there to be afraid of? Jun sneered. We're in the same boat anyway. You won't have a good time if we're fooling around. Although that was what he said, Princess Yaina did not have that intention. Jun would not force himself on her. The two of them flirted for a while, then they packed their clothes and washed their bodies in the dark room at the side of the private room. Chapter 350. Princess Yaina had changed into a new set of clothes. The new set of clothes was exactly the same as the one that Jun had torn just now. She left the residence in the name of praying for a child. If she returned in a different set of clothes, her stupid husband would be suspicious no matter how stupid he was. Yaina had always been meticulous. She could handle it perfectly even if there were a few servants around her, let alone such a small detail. Every time she came out to meet Jun, she would ask her trusted maidservant to bring 2 more sets of clothes that were exactly the same as a backup. Jun's eyes lingered on her beautiful body. He was restless as he watched her put on her clothes one by one. If it were not for the fact that it was a little late, he really wanted to fool around with Yaina. Apart from other things, this woman was very open on the couch. She had too many tricks for him to take in. As long as they could please each other's bodies, the two of them had tried almost all kinds of sexual methods. To be honest, the courtesans in the brothels were not as bold and skillful as Princess Yaina. He had been entangled with Yaina for a long time and pretended to be courteous with her. Apart from the fact that they were in the imperial court, her body was indeed very attractive. Jun had already entered the imperial court to participate in politics. The position of the concubine was still vacant in the backyard. He did not have any concubines, nor did he have any official concubines. However, those women were too reserved and boring. He felt like he was playing with a piece of wood when he was having sex with them. Haven't you seen enough just now? Princess Yaina glanced at him flirtatiously. She was like a cat gently scratching the most itchy piece of meat. She was not satisfied at all. Of course not. I can't wait to die of exhaustion on you, Jun answered naturally. Damn you. You're not serious at all. Princess Yaina pouted coquettishly. She put on the veil next to her and said, It's getting late. I should go back. If I go back late, your second brother will definitely be angry. It won't be so easy for me to leave the residence. Jun was annoyed. He really did not want to hear about his second brother from Yaina. Tisk, even if you go back early, can he give you a child as a natural eunuch? Jun sneered coldly. Although his second brother was not a eunuch and could use that thing, he could not impregnate a woman. Jun heard the news from Xianxia. He was very shocked when he heard it. Later on, he sent people to investigate secretly. He even found the old palace maids and female officials who had been released from the palace many years ago. After a lot of effort, he finally confirmed that what Xianxia said was true. His second brother was indeed a natural eunuch who was unable to impregnate a woman. This unmentionable illness was not innate. Instead, his second brother had been harmed by a woman in the harem when he was young. Later on, when it was discovered, it was already too late to save him. That job could be used, but it could not make people pregnant. How was that different from being a eunuch? Princess Xianxia smiled coquettishly. He can't make me pregnant, so I'm here to pray for a child. As she spoke, she gently placed her hand on her lower abdomen, as if this place was really nurturing a life. Jun secretly spat. A woman's heart was the most vicious. However, he said, it's not easy to pray for a child. Second sister-in-law, you have to come more often. It was ironic that Xianxia knew that her husband could not impregnate her. They had been married for a few years and had no children, but she still pretended not to know. She took the blame for the second prince's infertility. She repeatedly went out in the name of praying for a child, but in fact she was meeting with a few lovers. In a sense, it was true that she was praying for a child. However, she was not praying for a child-giving guanyin, but for other men. Jiang Pingji heard it and said with emotion, poor second prince. There must be an entire Hulunber grassland on his head, right? Suku was also eavesdropping. However, because Xianxia and Jun had already packed up and were a little far away from the corner, it was difficult for him to listen. Hulunber grassland? Where is this place? He had never heard of this place among the 5 kingdoms and 9 prefectures in the world. It doesn't matter where it is. What's important is that the grassland is green. Jiang Pingji crossed her arms in front of her chest and chuckled softly. She looked rather happy. Suka's expression subtly stiffened. Longjuan's witty remarks are really hard to refute. Rather than saying that she was witty, it was better to say that she was very sarcastic. Langjun, are you really not angry? Suka did not understand. He knew that the relationship between his Langjun and the second Yangzi was not good. They did not seem like a family at all, but they were half-siblings. Jun, her future brother-in-law, should be angry at her for messing around like that, right? The wedding was imminent, but the bridegroom, Jun, was fooling around outside and seducing a married woman. It was immoral and unethical. Why would I be angry? Jiang Pingji sneered. Jun is just a clown. My stepsister is ambitious, but her life is as fragile as a piece of paper. If the two of them are more obedient, they can live together for the rest of their lives even if they don't get along on the surface. If they play tricks together, they are a match made in heaven. Suka did not speak after hearing that. As a subordinate, it was indeed inappropriate for him to meddle in his Longjuan's family affairs. Suku was still in a daze after listening to the conversation. He did not expect Jun to be involved with Princess Xianxia. He had heard the gossip about the two of them from Jiang Pingji back then, but he did not expect to hear it live again after so many years. The tea is getting cold. Drink it. Jiang Pingji returned to the tea table. She looked as usual, as if the erotic activity next door did not affect her at all. In fact, that was indeed the case. For Jiang Pingji, whose spiritual pursuit was extremely harsh and could even be regarded as a tortoise's hair, Jun and Princess Xianxia's secret rendezvous, no matter whether it was low or high-pitched moans, sounded like the snorting of a boar or a sow. It did not evoke any desire. Suka could not do that. He was a novice driver who had just gotten his driver's license. He had just divorced his wife after a few days of marriage. He could not afford to be seduced. He secretly adjusted his breathing, suppressed the restlessness, and returned to a calm and untainted state. In the tea room, the two of them sat opposite each other and drank tea. They talked about some things in Shangjing in a low voice. On the other side, Princess Xianxia was not so calm. She had originally planned to leave with the curtain on, but as soon as she walked out of the tea room and turned a corner, she saw a maid enter the tea room next door. Obviously, there were customers in the tea room. Did the customers in the tea room hear her and Jun's tryst? If they did, how much did they hear? For a moment, countless complicated thoughts flashed through her mind. The dormant devil was ready to make a move again. Her intention to kill gradually rose. You come here. When the maid came out, Xianxia stood in the corner and beckoned her to come over. The maid saw that Princess Xianxia was wearing a heavy curtain. Her entire face was covered, but she was dressed in luxurious clothes. She did not dare to offend her. She quickly stepped forward to bow and asked in a low voice, "What can I do for you? There are customers in this tea room?" Xianxia asked. She gradually became restless. She still wanted to make use of Wuma Jun and her unlucky husband. The plan had been deployed. She did not want anything to go wrong at the critical moment. The maid did not know the inside story. She replied softly, "Yes, there are." Chapter 351. Xianxia secretly clenched her fists when she heard that. Wuma Jun, who was in the tea room, calculated the time. He felt that Xianxia had already left, so he got up and went out. However, he did not expect her to be talking to a maid at the door of the tea room. He sneered in his heart. It seemed like this woman could not leave him. There's someone next door. Xianxia did not explain further. Her tone was very cold. I don't know where he came from. Wuma Jun immediately tensed up when he heard that. He immediately felt a burst of anger. He was so angry that he almost choked. You have no rules. Doesn't the manager of the tea house know that today is a special day and this tea house doesn't receive guests? As he spoke, he felt a sense of guilt and fear. It was true that he and Xianxia had a secret rendezvous, but he did not want this matter to be exposed. The Dongqing royal family was very chaotic. It was common for one to sleep with his father's concubine, not to mention snatching his brother's sister-in-law, bullying the minister's wives, and even sleeping with his father's concubine. However, these were done by the elders. Wuma Jun wanted the throne and the ambition to unify the 9 states. He had to maintain a good image in public. If it was revealed that he had an affair with his second sister-in-law for many years and made his second brother a cuckold, he would be courting death. Wuma Jun had gone through a lot of hardships to get rid of the title of an unfavored prince. He gradually entered the emperor's line of sight, entered the court to work and accumulated his own connections. He had a very good image in public. He was polite, gentle and modest. He had accumulated a lot of resources and had his own followers. In a few days he was going to marry the daughter of Lu Prefecture's magistrate, Lu Shi. He would have a powerful family of in-laws. He could not fail at the last step. He could only be a prince of noble character and unquestionable integrity. He could not be an animal who had an affair with his second sister-in-law. In the past, when he and Xianxia had a secret rendezvous, the tea room next door would be empty and not receive guests. It had been like that for a few years. That was why Wuma Jun was so unguarded. He never expected such a big mistake to happen today. His vision faintly darkened and he almost lost his footing. In the face of Wuma Jun's reprimand, the maid knelt on the ground and shivered. Even her molars were chattering. Find out who is in this room first. If it's not important, make a decision early to avoid any unforeseen events. Princess Xianxia was extremely calm. She whispered in Wuma Jun's ear. Her usually pleasant voice carried a chilling murderous intent. Wuma Jun's muddled mind cleared up a little, and he immediately agreed to the suggestion. Between himself and others, he would naturally choose himself. Whoever stood in his path to success would be the one to die. Thinking of this, a ferocious killing intent flashed across his face. Xianxia sneered secretly when she saw that. Dongqing was nothing more than a country of etiquette. From top to bottom they were all beasts wearing delicate clothes. I know, Wuma Jun replied coldly. In the tea room, Xianxia's movements did not escape Jiang Pingji's ears. She did not ignore the malice and murderous aura coming from her. Jiang Pingji picked up the teacup and took a sip, then stood up gracefully. That posture was extremely leisurely, and anyone who saw it would exclaim in admiration. Let's go and welcome the guest outside. Suke put down the teacup and furrowed his brows. He knew that the visitor was not friendly. However, they refused to admit it. What else could Wuma Jun do? Could it be that this person had the courage to kill his Lang Jun? Outside the house, Wuma Jun had just come up with a few schemes in his mind. He was thinking about how to deal with the person quietly. All of a sudden the door was opened from the inside. Xiaoyu, you'd better bring enough money with you. Otherwise I'll really have to pawn you here today. As soon as the door was opened, a clear voice became clearer. Jun and Princess Xianxia subconsciously looked in the direction of the voice. Two young men walked out one after the other. The one in front was tall and handsome, while the one behind deliberately lagged behind by 3 steps. He was a head taller than the one in front, and his expression was cold and hard and his lips were thin. The strange thing was that the young man, who was wearing a green Confucian robe, had a stack of gauze covering the right side of his face near his ear. He looked weird. Jun's killing intent surged in his heart, but when he saw Jiang Pingji's face clearly, he suddenly felt like he was struck by lightning. At that moment, Jiang Pingji coincidentally saw him. Her eyes lit up and she walked toward him. "Jingzi, is that you?" The young man's voice was a little uncertain. When he got closer, it all turned into joy. Suku secretly laughed behind him. Langjun had good acting skills. Jun resisted the urge to break into a run. He braced himself and cupped his hands at Jiang Pingji. "Lanting. Hey, you're treating me like an outsider if you just call me Lanting. You'll be my brother-in-law in a few days. We're family. You don't have to be so polite." Jiang Pingji smiled. There was not a trace of gloom on her face. Her eyes were bright and her breathing and expression were 100% on point. Even if she was putting on a show, even if she was lying with her eyes open, she could still make the most perfect response. When Princess Xianxia heard their conversation, her beautiful eyes darkened. She guessed Jiang Pingji's identity in her heart and felt that it was rather tricky. Jun was the brother of the princess's wife and the second legitimate son of Lu Shi. His identity could not be touched. Since he could not be touched, he would sound her out to see if she had heard anything that she should not have in the tea room. Obviously Jun thought so too. "If that's the case, then I won't stand on ceremony and call you brother-in-law." Jun smiled and chatted with Jiang Pingji as if they were very close. When they were almost done chatting and the atmosphere was heated up, he pretended to inadvertently change the topic to the tea room. Jiang Pingji knew his intention, so she took the initiative to invite them into the tea room. She was not curious about Xianxia's identity. It was as if she was just Jun's concubine. It was a normal reaction. Even the brother-in-law had no right to control his future brother-in-law's concubine, so he could only choose to ignore her. She asked the maid to clean up the tea table and serve new tea ingredients and tea sets. Jun asked, "Why did you come here to drink tea?" "To accompany Xiaoyu to buy things for his new wife." "They're already married, but they're still so sweet." Jiang Pingji directly put all the blame on Suku with one sentence. Suku could not say anything about it. Jun had a low threshold for laughter. After hearing that, he clapped his hands and laughed as if he was really amused. Jiang Pingji continued, "He's tall and strong, so he's not afraid of getting tired. My 2 thin legs can't take it. I saw that there's a tea room here, so I came up to rest. Speaking of which, this is a good place. It's obviously a busy city, but it's quiet after I came up. It's just a little deserted." Jun said, "That's not right. It's an elegant place. If it's filled with noise from the outside world, won't it spoil the atmosphere?" "That's true. If that's the case, it'll be inferior and appear vulgar." Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "After listening to your explanation, this tea room actually has some hidden interest in the city. However, I'm worried that the tea here is expensive, so I don't dare to come here often." Chapter 352. Jun felt that he had found out the information he wanted without batting an eyelid. His anxious heart was at ease, and his posture was more relaxed than before. Princess Xianxia, who was silent, glanced at Jiang Pingji out of the corner of her eye. He happened to catch Jiang Pingji looking at her too. "Is this Zhengzi's beloved concubine?" Jiang Pingji asked deliberately. She was dressed like a woman and looked very familiar to Jun. Any normal person would have such doubts. Jun hurriedly clarified, "Brother-in-law, you can't simply say that. If second brother hears it, he'll definitely be jealous. This is my second sister-in-law. She went out of the city to climb Guanyin Mountain during the day and asked for your mercy. This is my second sister-in-law. She went out of the city to climb Guanyin Mountain during the day, so I wanted to send her back." He did not further explain why he did not send her back to the second prince's residence, but to the tea house instead. Jiang Pingji came to a sudden realization. She said frankly and apologetically, "Oh, it's the second princess. I was rude just now. Please forgive me." and Yaina took the opportunity to secretly size up Jiang Pingji. She was completely at ease when she saw that there was indeed nothing unusual about her expression. It's okay. I can't blame Lang Jun for suspecting me just now. It was indeed my fault. And Yaina did not let Jiang Pingji apologize and salute. She smiled sweetly to smooth things over. I wonder if Lang Jun heard anything just now? And Yaina suddenly asked. She still had a smile on her face. She curled her fingers like an orchid and pretended to tuck her hair behind her ears. One could not see any panic or guilt from her posture. It was as if the question just now was normal, as if she was asking about the weather. Although she asked that, her mesmerizing eyes were secretly observing Jiang Pingji's reaction and expression. Jiang Pingji was experienced. How could she be tricked by such a simple trick? She frowned as if she was puzzled. Her dark eyes were filled with doubt. She asked, "What happened?" Upon seeing that, Yaina felt relieved. She quickly thought of a suitable excuse and said, "Lang Jun, you don't know. I was taking a nap in the next room just now and heard some rustling. I was too tired from praying to Guanyin during the day, so I couldn't open my eyes. After waiting for a while, when I woke up, I found that I had lost a valuable item. Must have been a thief." She smiled bitterly as she spoke, as if that thing was very important to her. "A thief broke into the tea house?" Jiang Pingji furrowed her brows and asked seriously, "What did the second princess consort lose? If it's a personal item, once the thief spreads it, it may cause great damage to your reputation. You must catch him as soon as possible." And Yaina pursed her lips and revealed a bitter expression. "Thank you for your concern, Lu Langjun." Perhaps the thief knew how powerful he was, so he didn't steal anything valuable. He only took a few money bags and lost some ordinary belongings. It's just that there's a handful of soil in the purse that I brought from my hometown. I always carry it with me to remind myself not to forget my roots. Now that it's been stolen by the thief, I'm in a panic." And Yaina left her hometown alone and married into Dongqing. No one could say that it was not good for her to carry her hometown with her. Jiang Pingji could not help but look moved. She sighed softly and said, "The marriage of the second princess consort to Dongqing is the link between the two countries. However, it's hard to leave one's hometown. The noble act of carrying your hometown with you makes me feel ashamed. I would like to help you with this matter. However, Xiaoyu and I didn't hear anything unusual when we were drinking tea in this tea house. Should we ask the manservant in the hall?" And Yaina knew how good the tea house was. Otherwise, she would not have chosen it to meet Wuma Jun. Now that she had tried repeatedly and confirmed that Jiang Pingji and Xiaoyu really did not hear her secret, the doubts in their hearts naturally dissipated. She smiled and nodded, revealing a fragile and worried look. "If that's the case, I'd better not trouble you. I'll send someone to check it out later. If I can't get it back, I can only lament that it's God's will. I heard that your sister is about to marry into the royal family. She'll be a relative by then. You should visit her more often in the future. It's getting late now. I should go back to the residence so that my husband won't miss me." And Yaina deliberately mentioned her stepsister Lu Huan in the Lu residence. Jiang Pingji responded very tactfully. "You're right, second princess consort." Jiang Pingji smiled embarrassedly and said humbly, "My sister has been spoiled too much at home. She has a bad temper. Please take care of her after the wedding, second princess consort. If that's the case, I'll be very grateful." And Yaina chuckled and covered her lips with a handkerchief. She threw Jiang Pingji a moving look that seemed to be annoyed. "Your sister's husband is here. He should be the one to take care of her." And Yaina stood up and pretended to leave. Wuma Jun blushed in cooperation. He played the role of a newbie driver who was about to get married vividly. In the background, Suku watched the three of them act together calmly. He looked down and acted like he was watching a show. In terms of acting skills, he only admired Jiang Pingji. And Yaina and Wuma Jun should not be underestimated either. That was true. They could hide from everyone's eyes and ears for a secret rendezvous. If they did not have some acting skills, they would have been exposed long ago. How could they be free and unfettered until now? Seeing that Yaina and Wuma Jun found an excuse to leave, Suku stood up with Jiang Pingji and prepared to send them off. However, God did not seem to care for Yaina and Wuma Jun. Their departure did not go smoothly. A maidservant stopped them with a slightly awkward expression and bowed deeply to them. "What happened downstairs?" Jiang Pingji played with the sandalwood fan in her hand. She opened it and closed it with a snap. She asked the maid indifferently, "If you don't have an explanation and stop the four of us here, I'll settle the score with your boss." The maid heard that and cold sweat rolled down her back. She said in fear and trepidation, "Please don't be angry. Please don't be angry. It's just that some unruly commoners are making trouble downstairs. I didn't want to offend you, so I took the liberty to stop you." Making trouble? Jiang Pingji smiled. "I remember that this is a property under Prince Changshuo's name. How dare someone make trouble here?" As she spoke, there was a clatter downstairs. It seemed that something had been smashed. Jiang Pingji walked past the maid and went downstairs to join in the fun. "Xiaoyu, protect the fourth prince and the second princess. Don't let the villains offend them." Before she left, she gave Su Ku an order. It was also that order that ruined Su Ku's and Xiaoyu's plan to leave through the back door. They could only bite the bullet and follow her downstairs. In the hall, the musicians who were plucking the strings and the dancers who were dancing had already pushed away in fear and hid at the side. There were two groups of people confronting each other at the place where they were supposed to be painting. They were at daggers drawn and the atmosphere was tense. What happened? Jiang Pingji looked at the two groups of people and asked the manservant who was doing odd jobs on the first floor in a low voice. Chapter 353. Hearing Jiang Pingji's question, he composed himself and cupped his fists in fear. "Lang Jun, if you have nothing to do, it's better not to get involved in this matter." When the gods fought, the mortals suffered. In Shangjing there were two groups of people that could not be provoked. One was the relatives of the emperor and the other was a group led by eunuchs. The two groups fought openly and covertly in the court. They were also at loggerheads in the court. "Oh, I'm just asking what happened. What does it have to do with you whether we can afford to provoke them or not?" Jiang Pingji was too lazy to lift her eyelids. Although the servant had good intentions, after thinking about it carefully, he was overbearing. He was just asking. It was her business whether they would cause trouble or not. It was also her business whether she was afraid of trouble. She did not need a third party to make decisions for her. The servant's face froze. He realized that his words were inappropriate and had angered Jiang Pingji. He hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. He cupped his fists and apologized. "Langyun, please forgive me. It was my fault just now." Jiang Pingji responded. Her eyes drifted to the two groups of people in the middle of the hall. They seemed to be confronting and discussing. There were messy tea sets and the four treasures of the study lying at their feet. There were also tea tables and study tables that had fallen apart. It seemed like they were going to start a fight. The servant understood. He did not dare to act smart this time. He hurriedly explained, "It's not a big deal. It's just that Secretary Huang's godson and General Feng's Langjun had a conflict because of the chief. They disagreed with the judgment and had a quarrel. That's why they started a fight." "Secretary Huang?" Jiang Pingji frowned. She understood the situation in Shangyang Palace. Secretary Huang should refer to the most useful eunuchs by the emperor's side. Among them, Secretary Huang served the emperor and was valued by the emperor. He had a great say in the group of eunuchs. He was the one who sold positions and titles the most. Although Secretary Huang was a rootless eunuch and was destined to have no bloodline to inherit, he could recognize a godson and continue the family line. The so-called godson was naturally the child of Secretary Huang's adopted godson. He called Secretary Huang grandfather. As for General Feng, it should refer to the emperor's mother's family. General Feng was the emperor's mother's younger brother. His family was favored. More importantly, the emperor's first wife was also from the Feng family. Including the one conferred posthumously by the emperor, the Feng family had already produced 2 empresses. For a time they were extremely wealthy. In order to keep the aristocratic families in check and balance, the emperor took back the power in the hands of the aristocratic families and made great efforts to rope and cheese maternal family. "These 2 groups of people are fighting because of the leader?" Jiang Pingji asked. "Yes." The manservant nodded awkwardly. The main mission of the tea house was to attract and discover talented people. They would often take out prizes to attract scholars to gather here and paint. Then from all the works, the best would be chosen as the champion. The treasured works could also be hung in the tea house for guests to admire and promote their literary reputation. True scholars from noble families disdained this method of spreading their fame, but ordinary commoners valued it very much. In addition, the owner of this tea house was Prince Xianxia, who had real power. Naturally, the tea house's business was not bad. Even though the descendants of eunuchs were wealthy, they were still looked down upon by others. They also needed a reputation to gild themselves. To put it bluntly, they were nouveau riche. They had no foundation and could not lift their heads in front of the aristocratic families. Secretary Huang's godson was 18 years old. He was very good-looking and looked like a scenery when he stood there. However, he had the title of descendant of eunuchs in his head. He had always been despised by the gentry families. The gentry families with a foundation could not hang out with him. He also knew what he lacked, so he worked hard to promote his literary reputation. He could not change his background and could not decide his starting point. He had to work harder the day after tomorrow. As for General Feng's son, he was a playboy. His height and width were almost the same. God knew how many masters he had hired, but after a few years he still could not teach much. He usually did not listen to classes and did not work hard. He only knew how to fool around in the inner court and spoiled many girls. However, he thought highly of himself and felt that his talent had surpassed the sky. He was very indignant that his first place had been taken away by others. Because of this, the two groups of people confronted each other. General Feng's son even instructed the manservant to fight. "Bah, you're just a descendant of eunuchs. You can't just enjoy your old capital or inherit the family's unique skills. How dare you come out and make a fool of yourself?" General Feng's son raised his hand and wiped his face. His face was oily, making him look very greasy and fat. Family's unique skills? Wasn't this directly cursing people to be cleansed and become eunuchs? Vulgar. You can't win in a literary battle, so you want to take advantage of your power to bully others. Do you think I will be afraid of you? Secretary Huang's grandson was so angry that his face turned red. However, his figure was really not threatening in front of the fat man. Who said that I can't win in a literary battle? It's obvious that the referee was bribed by you and faked it in private. Bah, how can a person without a background write a good article? If you can recognize all the words, your ancestral grave will also emit smoke. The fat man seized on the title of descendant of eunuchs to refute him. The manservant beside him had already rolled up his sleeves and was ready to fight. If you don't believe me, you can ask around in Shangjing City. What kind of work does your old man surnamed Huang do now? Secretary Huang's grandson secretly clenched his fists. He didn't like the title of descendant of eunuchs, but he really treated Secretary Huang as his own grandfather. How could he tolerate outsiders humiliating him? Damn fat man, you really won't give up until you see the coffin. Do you really want to fight for real and fight for real? Come on, see if I won't beat you until you call me father. Whoever is afraid is a coward. Take off your clothes, lie on the ground and bark like a dog. The fat man also clamored fearlessly. General Feng controlled the imperial guards in Shangjing City. To put it bluntly, he didn't need to care about anyone except the emperor and the princes of the royal family. Not to mention a small eunuch's son. Even if it was Secretary Huang himself, he didn't need to be afraid. The people of the two sides were burning with anger. It seemed that the battle would start at any moment. Plang. Naturally, they didn't need to fight with each other. They just handed it over to the manservant beside them. Fight. Fight with all your strength. Beat them until they piss their pants. If you don't teach them a good lesson, the grandson of a eunuch dares to mess around in Shangjing. What a sh*t. The fat man shouted while stepping on a table. His expression was ferocious and excited. Secretary Huang's grandson also hid behind the hatchet man. He saw an inkstone, directly grabbed it and splashed the ink on the fat man. For a moment, the manservants of the two sides wrestled with each other and threw whatever they caught. The fat man was too fat and wasn't sensitive enough. Secretary Huang's grandson hid behind the people and sneakily attacked and threw the ink. The entire hall on the first floor was filled with screams and the sound of smashing. Some scholars couldn't stand it anymore and simply covered their faces and left. Some people hid at the side and watched the show. It was really a feast for the eyes. To put it simply, this was just a fight between two young men. Neither of them was convinced by the other. Chapter 354. Inyang Kuaishan. Oh my god, the spectators were so surprised that they dropped the melons in their hands. After watching the host's live broadcast for a few years, this was the first time he had seen a group fight of such a scale. Moreover, the two parties involved in the fight were rich second generations with great status in ancient times. This feeling was indescribable. Lao Ciji Lianming. Tiske, to put it bluntly, they are just nouveau riche or local tycoons with no background. From this, it could be seen how the upbringing of the two families was like. If it were a landowning household with a solid foundation, even if they wanted nothing more than to stomp the other party to death, they would still be courteous on the surface. Linglong Mabauso, #propping my chin. Compared to a hypocritical battle of words, I still prefer this kind of momentum. Muan Bao Bao Tai, I like it too. Just like what the host had said before, it was useless no matter how eloquent you were with your mouth. Once your opponent's ears were blocked, you wouldn't be able to affect him no matter how loud your opponent was. What was the use of only being good at talking? Even if he gave the other party a few scratches, why not hit him back for others to see? Therefore, if you can use your fists, you definitely can't use your mouth. Because of Jiang Pingji's influence, most of the audience in the streaming room had been infected with her temperament. Life and death are indifferent. If you're not satisfied, just fight. If you can use your fists, don't talk nonsense. Jiang Pingji raised her hand to protect Su Ku to prevent the thin scholar from getting involved in the melee. Out of the corner of her eye, she glanced at the expressions of the passers-by around her. They all looked like they were here to watch the show. She was slightly moved. Let them fight and not find someone to separate them? Jiang Pingji lowered her eyelids and asked the servant coldly. The servant smiled bitterly as if he had drunk a large bowl of bitter gourd juice. His entire face was scrunched up. What are you talking about? The servant added in his heart, but he didn't dare to say it out loud. Although my master is Prince Changsho, the prince is busy every day. How would he have the time to care about these trivial matters? No matter if it's the grandson of Secretary Huang or the son of General Feng, they're both immovable Buddhas. Who dares to stop them? It was not a big deal to stop a fight, but they were afraid that both sides would think that the third party was a hindrance and beat up the person who tried to stop the fight first. At that time, it would truly be like suffering in silence, unable to voice out the bitterness. When immortals fought, mortals suffered. Now he could only hope that they would finish the fight as soon as possible so that the tea house could close early. As for the items that were broken or smashed, make a list and send it directly to their mansions. For the sake of the Buddha, the owner of the tea house was Prince Changsho. Secretary Huang and Army General Feng would also consider compensating them. After listening, Jiang Pingji coldly responded with an "oh," and did not comment further. A bunch of brats causing trouble. They're wrestling on the ground. There's no technique involved at all. Jiang Pingji crossed her arms in front of her chest and took a step back to avoid the delicate teacup that was about to hit her toes. She tilted her head and complained to Su Ku, "Who do you think will win?" Su Ku glanced at his Langjun and prayed that he would not cause any more trouble. He lowered his eyes and muttered, "It should be from Secretary Huang's family. Nowadays the government relies more on eunuchs." The group of eunuchs was very powerful and now they were also arrogant like the sun at high noon. But in essence, everything they had came from the emperor's connivance. The selling of official positions and titles was also secretly approved by the emperor. They were closely attached to the emperor, and their life and death were decided by the emperor. If the emperor was still young, they would have great achievements. But the problem was that although the emperor was muddle-headed, he was blinded by greed and attached great importance to power. The eunuchs were just dogs in the emperor's hands that were used to bite people. The group of relatives of the emperor was different. Although they were also the emperor's dogs, they had their own roots and had more autonomy than the eunuchs. The emperor also handed the imperial guards of Shangjing to the Feng family, which showed how much the emperor valued the Feng family, the group of relatives of the emperor. They also had a higher position in the emperor's heart. Whether it was the group of relatives of the emperor or the group of eunuchs, they were originally promoted by the emperor to deal with the aristocrats. Now that most of the aristocrats in Shangjing had retreated, there were also many high officials who had resigned. For example, the head of the secretariat, Feng Ren, had given the emperor a fatal illusion. What illusion? He mistakenly thought that he had taken back the power in the hands of the aristocratic families. He felt that he was no longer a puppet emperor who was constrained by others. Under such circumstances, the two dogs that he raised, the group of eunuchs and the group of relatives of the emperor, became a bit of an eyesore. The group of eunuchs could only rely on the emperor. In comparison, the group of relatives of the emperor was more troublesome. Jiang Pingji also guessed that they were from Secretary Huang's family, but the reason was not what Suku was worried about. The contest between the group of relatives of the emperor and the group of eunuchs was also real. If it was in the court, how could it be placed on a few juniors? The child of General Feng's family is too fat. Look at his figure. He can block half of the door of the tea house by himself. No matter how he moves, he is a huge target. Secretary Huang's grandson is clever. He has been hiding behind the manservant and shooting arrows from the back. He has great achievements. Who gave him the courage to compete with a long-distance fighter in terms of mobility? Suku was silent. He suddenly felt that his previous serious analysis had all been fed to the dogs. Jiang Pingji continued, however, when it comes to a group fight, one man can hold the pass against 10,000 people, or one man can drown people with too much saliva. Secretary Huang's young Langjun doesn't have enough fighters. If it continues to drag on, I'm afraid he will suffer losses. When Suku heard that, he secretly rolled his eyes. When it came to a group fight, he only admired his Langjun. As they talked, the situation became clearer and clearer. General Feng's son was very favored at home. Whenever he went out, he would bring 20 to 30 thugs with him. Just now, only half of them participated in the battle. The other half received the news that Langjun had been beaten and rushed in from outside. Originally, the two sides were evenly matched, but now, because of the number of people, the balance had tilted. Seeing that Secretary Huang's grandson was about to be caught and beaten up, the lad suddenly rolled backward and shouted regardless of his embarrassment. "Brother Zhu, come and save me." Brother Zhu? Jiang Pingji was already tired of watching. She didn't expect Secretary Huang's grandson to call for help at the last minute. She scanned her surroundings, wanting to find out who Brother Zhu was. Feng Pengzi's side had already formed an overwhelming advantage. His super heavy body formed a shadow that forced Secretary Huang's grandson to the corner. "Bah! Call for help. Let's see who can help you, you bastard." Secretary Huang's grandson's face had already blossomed, and there were some green and purple bruises on it. He looked embarrassed, but his eyes were still stubborn. I'll return those words to you. Don't be so scared that you'll wet your pants later." Feng Pengzi's heart was burning with anger. He raised his huge fist and wanted to hit someone. At that moment, a clear voice that sounded like a compass came from the crowd. "Wait. Who's messing with my business?" Feng Pengzi turned his head and looked fiercely at the source of the voice. Everyone immediately looked over and saw a young man who was about 15 or 16 years old standing in the corner. He wore a green Confucian robe which made him look tall. Chapter 355. "Hey, you're just a skinny kid. Do you want to stand up for this bastard?" Feng Pengzi bared his teeth and waved his fist threateningly. The handsome young man with red lips and white teeth was not afraid at all. It was as if he did not see the huge fist. "Fight? I definitely can't beat you." Feng Zhu only had a servant with him. Although he had learned horsemanship, archery and swordsmanship, he could only defend himself. He was not lethal enough. "But Feng Langjun is bullying me with numbers. Isn't it a bit too much? If you can't beat me, get lost. Don't nag in front of me. Either you stand and watch him get beaten or you come and get beaten up together. This is Shangjing. Who doesn't know my name? How dare a jealous scholar come and stir up trouble?" Feng Zhu's eyebrows relaxed and he said leisurely, "Although I'm not Feng Longjuan's opponent, it doesn't mean that no one can subdue you." Feng Pengzi responded with an "oh," and said nastily, "Do you want to go home and beg for help? There's no need for that." Feng Zhu suddenly revealed an evil smile. It was as if a pure white drawing paper was dyed with a thick and colorful line. "Feng Langjun, do you dare to bet with me? If you win, I won't care about Huang Longjuan's matter. If you lose, this matter will be written off." Feng Pengzi snorted. Although he had a fat pig's ears and no ink on his chest, it did not mean that he was really a pig. "This bet doesn't benefit me at all." Feng Pengzi sized up Feng Zhu with a pair of sneaky eyes and then said nastily, "Why don't we change the bet? If you win, it'll be written off. If you lose, you'll spend a night with me. How about that?" As soon as he said that, everyone's expression changed. Feng Zhu's eyes flickered and revealed a frightening murderous intent. Feng Pengzi was frightened. His legs turned to jelly under the gaze, but he still straightened his chest. Secretary Huang's grandson did not expect things to turn out this way. He hurriedly scolded Feng Pengzi. "Shut up. You really dare to say anything? Brother Zhu is the third Langjun of the Feng family in Xiangyang. Aren't you afraid of offending people?" He deliberately emphasized the words, third Langjun of the Feng family. When Jiang Pingji heard this, she secretly sized up Feng Zhu. She thought to herself, this is Feng Jin's third brother? Feng Zhu's attire looked simple, but the material of his clothes was exquisite. With one look, one could tell that he was either rich or noble. Feng Pengzi did not expect him to have such a powerful background. Although the head of the secretariat Feng Ren had retired long ago, the prestige of the Feng family in Dongqing was still unshakable. Feng Pengzi wanted to retreat, but he didn't want to show any fear on his face. Feng Zhu sneered and said, "Sure. Brother Zhu." Secretary Huang's grandson looked regretful. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have dragged Feng Zhu into this quagmire. Feng Pengzi secretly cursed in his heart. Since Feng Zhu didn't give him a way out, then everyone was in a difficult position. "What are we betting on?" Feng Pengzi asked. Feng Zhu pointed at Jiang Pingji, who was watching the show from the side. "Whoever can take away a personal item from this Langjun will be the winner. What do you think?" Jiang Pingji was confused. The audience in the streaming room also reacted. He was trying to divert the trouble to someone else. Xylitol chewing gum. No way. Young Feng Jin's brother is so black-bellied and hateful. He actually framed the streamer? Linglong Mabauso, you're so naughty. The streamer is really unjustly implicated this time. Noodle House Lao CG. Why do I feel that this brother Zhu has already recognized the streamer's identity and wants to ask for help? Feng Jin knows the streamer. He must have told his brother about the streamer's terrifying combat power. He said that the streamer can fight 100 people alone. Everyone was confused by the content of the bet. Feng Pengzi was the first to react. He was so angry that he almost stomped his feet. "Bah, you must know this person. This is cheating." Feng Zhu looked innocent and said, "I don't know this Langjun." Jiang Pingji frowned unhappily. Her hands were a little itchy. She said, "I don't know him either." Feng Pengzi smiled evilly. "Since you don't know him, this bet is much easier. Kid, if you don't want to suffer for nothing, then take out a personal item. The more personal the better. This young master will definitely win this bet. Surround him." The manservants obeyed and hurriedly surrounded Jiang Pingji, separating Feng Zhu at the same time. As long as Feng Pengzi got Jiang Pingji's personal item before Feng Zhu, he would win the bet. Jiang Pingji sneered and suddenly asked in a clear voice, "Feng Huayu, are all your brothers so naughty?" At that moment, a clear and mature voice of a young man came from the private room on the second floor. "My younger brother is naughty and mischievous. Please forgive him." As soon as the voice fell, a young man wearing a jade crown and a watercolored scholar's robe lifted the bead curtain of the private room and walked down the stairs. Looking closely, it was not Feng Huayu, whom they had not seen for a few years. The young man's appearance was magnificent. His facial features were slightly similar to the young man from before. When the two were put together, it was obvious that they were biological brothers. Even so, he shouldn't have made such a bet. If he had lost, how would it have ended? Jiang Pingji was puzzled. In her opinion, the upbringing of the Feng family could only produce a gentleman like Feng Jin. How could they have produced someone as rebellious as Feng Zhu? He was bold and willful. He even dared to agree to the terms of the bet. This kid had a good temper. With Jin watching over him, nothing will happen. After not seeing him for a few years, Feng Jin's impatience and immaturity had disappeared under the tempering of time. What was left was the smoothness and transparency of pearls and jade. He was like a pearl that had been dusted off. He shone brightly, warm and not dazzling. What about my reputation? Nothing would happen to him, but his reputation would be bad if it was spread out. Feng Jin's lips moved slightly. There was a hint of helplessness in his eyes. There's no need to worry when there are too many debts. Among the three brothers of the Feng family, only Feng Zhu was a freak. His rebellious temperament was unknown to whom he got it from. Jiang Pingji understood after hearing his words. Jiang Pingji and Feng Jin reminisced about the past. Feng Pengzi felt that he had been left out. He was unhappy and was about to throw a tantrum. Feng Pengzi stomped his feet and pointed his fat finger at Jiang Pingji. His expression was slightly ferocious. Who cares who you are? Capture this kid and remove his clothes. Didn't you want a personal item? I'll take it all and make this bet lose for sure. Feng Jin looked at Feng Pengzi with pity. He was acting recklessly. Feng Ju's eyes moved back and forth between his brother and Jiang Pingji. No one knew what he was thinking. Take good care of my accountant. If he loses even a strand of hair, you can't afford to pay for it. Jiang Pingji threw the sandalwood fan in her hand into Feng Jin's arms and entrusted Su Ku to him. On the side, Princess and Yaina glanced at the handsome Feng brothers with coquettish eyes. They were a feast for the eyes and made one's fingers twitch. She wondered where Lu Shi came from. He actually knew so many young talents. Feng Jin smiled happily. Of course, I'll ensure that Xiaoyu will be fine. The audience in the streaming room could not help but cover their eyes. The scene that followed was too bloody. They could not bear to look at it. Hee, have you thought it through? Feng Pengzi was still unaware of his imminent death. He thought that Jiang Pingji was afraid of trouble and wanted to take the initiative to admit defeat. Remove your clothes. Do you know who my father is? Jiang Pingji asked. Feng Pengzi was furious. I don't care who your father is. Yes, you don't have to care who my father is, but you have to know who I am. Chapter 356. You don't need to know who your father is, but you need to know who your father is. Hearing Jiang Pingji's declaration, Feng Ju was stunned on the spot. A wanton evil smile appeared on his face. Second brother, is this the Lu Lanting that you always talk about? It's true that hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. What a madman. Not to mention anything else, just this rebellious arrogance was quite to his liking. Feng Jin secretly caught a glimpse of his younger brother's infatuated expression. He couldn't help but raise his hand and tug on his sleeve, pulling him out of the battle circle. He didn't want his third brother to be innocently implicated. If he was beaten up by Jiang Pingji, he would have been beaten up for nothing. There would be no place for him to argue. As he spoke, Secretary Huang's grandson held his sore waist with one hand and covered his slapped face with the other as he limped towards Feng Ju. Brother Ju, it's my fault this time. I've implicated you. Hiss. This stinking fatty, it hurts a lot when he hits me. Secretary Huang's grandson grimaced in pain. In terms of nominal age, he was 2 years older than Feng Ju, but in terms of months, it was only 2 or 3 months a year. Probably because he often fell and rolled, he looked stronger than his peers, but his head was a little injured. Feng Ju secretly held back his laughter and revealed concern on his face. It's fine. It's just that when Bogeo returns this time, I'm afraid he will be punished by the family law Rot Tan. When he heard the words family technique Rot Tan, his face, which looked as if a palette of colors had been overturned, became even more distorted, making him look even more abstract. Alas. Don't talk about it. I'll definitely be beaten when I go back this time. Secretary Huang's grandson looked sullen, and his face was full of drama. When he was free, he secretly glanced at Feng Ju. Seeing that Feng Ju had no intention of distancing himself from him, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, even if he hated others who humiliated him because he was the descendant of a eunuch, he could not deny his family background. It was also the source of his inferiority complex. It was not easy for him to meet a like-minded friend who came from a prestigious family. He really did not want to lose Feng Ju because of this. This is Huaiji's good friend? Feng Jin did not care about the chaotic situation on the field, because he knew very well that those minions were not even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Feng Jin's younger brother was called Feng Ju. His courtesy name was Huaijia. This generation of the Feng clan's descendants were mostly named with words related to jade. Hearing Feng Jin mention him, Secretary Huang's grandson quickly put away his playful expression and said seriously, "That's me." Feng Ju introduced, "Second brother, this is Huang Song, the classmate and good friend I've always mentioned. He's the disciple of the great scholar Mr. Ji." Dongqing had a strong academic atmosphere and there were many great scholars. Although the Mr. Ji that Feng Ju mentioned was not comparable to Master Yuanjing, he was still a very famous great scholar within the borders of Dongqing. Huang Song was able to use the title of the eunuch's descendant and become the disciple of a famous teacher. Obviously he had some skills. Huang Song hurriedly said, I don't deserve it. Second brother Feng can just call me Bogeo. Feng Jin smiled gently and nodded. Then it would be impolite of me to refuse. Huang Song was very sensitive to the emotional changes of others. He immediately knew that Feng Jin was keeping a distance from him. He wasn't too upset about this. If others knew that he was Secretary Huang's adopted grandson, they would have covered their noses and walked away. Very few people were willing to have a normal conversation with him. Feng Jin's attitude was actually very good. He was so focused on recognizing people that he almost forgot that Jiang Pingji was still fighting with Feng Pengzi. Huang Song slapped his forehead with one hand and hurriedly turned to ask Feng Ju. Brother Ju, should we call for help? Feng Ju lowered his eyelids and pouted. Does he look like he needs help? As soon as he finished speaking, Huang Song also turned his head to look at the situation of the fight in the hall. He happened to see a huge black shadow fall at his feet. Huang Song was so scared that he hurriedly took 2 steps back. He was still in shock. Come. Now tell me who's the father. You're the father. You're the father. Feng Pengzi could still be arrogant at first, but as the servants died one by one and became paralyzed at his feet, his confidence became more and more fragile. He was like a snail that had its shell removed, revealing its tender body to be trampled on by others. He didn't feel the slightest sense of security. In an instant he responded to whatever Jiang Pingji said with tears and snot flowing down his face. Jiang Pingji lifted her leg and kicked the servant who was blocking the way aside. She grabbed Feng Pengzi's collar with one hand and lifted him up with one hand while Huang Song's eyes almost popped out of his head. Say it again. My ears aren't good. I didn't hear it. Father, you're my father. Feng Pengzi was tall and sturdy, but it was all fat. He was shorter than Jiang Pingji by a head. Now that she lifted him up like a little chick, he was scared out of his wits. He shrank his neck like a quail and spoke incoherently. When Huang Song saw this, he was secretly speechless. He almost bit his tongue. He muttered in a low voice, "Oh my, that damn fatty weighs more than 2 dawn," but he actually lifted him up with one hand. This is simply innate divine strength. 1 dawn was equivalent to about 50 kilograms. 2 dawn was a full 200 kilograms, and this was just an estimated figure. Looking at Feng Pengzi's body size, he was at least 240 kilograms. His arms were thin, but he didn't expect his strength to be so great. Only then did he realize that Jiang Pingji had single-handedly defeated all the servants and fighters that Feng Pengzi had brought. Everyone had been beaten black and blue. Even though no one had died, looking at the degree of swelling, they would not be able to leave the house for the next 2 weeks and would not be able to see anyone. When he saw this, Huang Song's eyes revealed his appreciation for talent. He was eager to make friends with her. It's not a secret that Lang Jun was born with divine strength. Su Ku chuckled as if the person who emitted the aura of a ruffian was not his Lang Jun. May I know where your Longjun's ancestral home is and where he lives? Huang Song asked with his hands cupped together. He was rather gentlemanly. My Longjun's ancestral home is in Hejian. He has lived here for a long time. His family is Lu, Su Ku said plainly. When Huang Song met his eyes, he faintly felt a sense of fear, as if his thoughts had been seen through. The magistrate of Chongzhou, Lu Shi, is Longjun's father. This background was not something that the descendants of eunuchs could covet. Su Ku added silently in his heart. Lu Shi's son Lu Shi? Huang Song suddenly thought of something. Are you saying that he is the Lu Shi who was born with divine strength and chased the tiger across the ravine? Chased the tiger across the ravine. This was a term used to describe a fierce general in the previous dynasty. It meant that this person was incomparably fierce. Even a ferocious tiger would break into a run when it saw him. Although Jiang Pingji was also born with divine strength, her reputation was not prominent. Until she left Langyi, she gambled with someone and killed 2 tigers. She even brought the 2 tiger carcasses around the city and flaunted them around her opponent's house. She was so angry that she vomited blood. Her fierce reputation spread because of that. Chapter 357. That's right. Su Ku nodded calmly. Huang Song completely gave up. Talented people were everywhere, but his status was low. There was no way for him to attract talented people, let alone Lu Shi's son. However, even if he could not be recruited, he could treat him as a friend. Seeing that he was so bold, he should be a broad-minded person who did not adhere to the secular world. Thinking of this, the regret in Huang Song's heart calmed down a little. He continued to watch the farce. Jiang Pingji looked at the bruise on the fat man's left eye. Driven by her obsessive-compulsive disorder, she simply hit his right eye too. It was symmetrical. Bah, I can't give birth to a good-for-nothing son like you. If I give birth to you, you'll definitely be a wall-climbing sissy. Such ridiculing words made all the guests in the hall laugh. In terms of sarcasm, Jiang Pingji's words were really sarcastic. Extremely sarcastic. Aren't you afraid of being torn into pieces? The fat man was called back to his senses by the laughter. He was so embarrassed that his face turned red. He mustered up the courage to threaten her. If you have the cheek to ask your father to come over, I don't mind beating him up too. Jiang Pingji was not joking. If the fat man really dared to shout, she really dared to beat him up. The fat man was so angry that his face turned red. Jiang Pingji felt that she was not angry enough and added another sentence. However, if that's really the case, you'll have to call me grandpa when the time comes. As soon as the sentence was said, many people did not come back to their senses. They did not understand what she meant. Only Feng Jin, Feng Ju and Su Ku were quick-witted. They understood the meaning behind it and almost choked on their own saliva. Huang Song was also quick-witted. He understood after a while. Jiang Pingji's words were very clear. She would beat the fat man up and ask him to call her father. If the fat man's father came, he would definitely be beaten up until he rolled on the ground and called her father. In that case, the fat man would become a grandchild and have to call Jiang Pingji grandpa. These words were really sarcastic. Get lost. I never leave anyone alive when I fight. If it weren't for your fathers, your corpses would be cold. Jiang Pingji sneered and threatened him. If you go back and complain, go ahead. This young master would like to hear whether it is you or me who is in the right. Although the cause was Feng Pengzi and Huang Song's fight for the top spot in the tea house, in the end, Feng Pengzi actually wanted to strip Jiang Pingji naked and humiliate her. This was no longer a simple conflict. If things got out of hand, it would not be easy to resolve. You just wait for this young master. Feng Pengzi was casually thrown to the ground by Jiang Pingji. His butt landed on the floor of the hall. He felt as if his tailbone was about to break. He awkwardly covered his face with one hand and covered his aching face with the other. Before he ran away, he didn't forget to leave behind some harsh words. You're welcome to come again. Jiang Pingji waved her hand. There was no trace of fear on her face. The fat man's face turned purple from holding back his anger. He left in a sorry state under the protection of a group of hired thugs and servants. When Feng Pengzi was out of sight, Jiang Pingji wiped away the annoying smile on her face and resumed her usual coldness. Remember to compensate for the damage you've done to their place. These words were directed at Feng Jin. If it weren't for Feng Jin's brother, she wouldn't have suffered such an undeserved calamity. Feng Jin smiled gently and dignified. Huang Song, who was beside him, hurriedly said, Today's incident started because of me. The compensation should be paid by me. I'll get the servants to send it over later. How can I let second brother Feng suffer losses? Although Huang Song was the descendant of a eunuch, other than having a bad reputation, his life was more comfortable than anyone else's. In terms of pocket money among everyone present, his private stash was the richest. Who is this? Jiang Pingji had been multitasking just now. She already knew Huang Song's background, but she still pretended not to know and asked despite knowing the answer. Huang Song introduced himself embarrassedly. I'm Huang Song. If Lu Langjun doesn't mind, you can call me Bogeo. Sure. Jiang Pingji nodded. Huang Song's eyes lit up. Compared to Feng Jin's gentle and distant attitude, Jiang Pingji didn't give him the feeling that she was unreachable. In other words, there was a chance to be friends. At that moment, Wu Ma Jun, who had been ignored by everyone for a long time, opened his mouth. That young Langjun is the beloved son of Marquis Chenjen. Lanting humiliated him, so Marquis Chenjen won't let it go. Marquis Chenjen was actually General Feng, who controlled 100,000 imperial guards in Shangjing. What's there to be afraid of? If he has the guts to come and reason with us, we'll bring out the facts and reason with him. Who doesn't have a father in this day and age? Jiang Pingji snorted. Her last sentence of competing for a father made Wuma Jun swallow his unfinished words. Feng Pengzi had brought 20 to 30 fighters with him, but they couldn't beat him and were killed instead. If General Feng was shameless, he could go ahead and announce it. If he really wanted to cause trouble for her, Jiang Pingji didn't have to be afraid. Competing for a father was fine. Who didn't have a father? She had instigated Lu Shi to go to Chongzhou. The court then sent a new chief of Hu County to take over Hu County. It was a pity that Hu County was like an iron bucket under Lu Shi's governance. The people didn't accept the new boss. 3 years had passed and Hu County was still under Lu Shi's control. Chapter 358. After Wuma Jun found an excuse to send Princess and Yaina away, Feng Jin suddenly sighed and spoke to Jiang Pingji. You shouldn't have come to Shangjing. The hustle and bustle downstairs gradually quietened down with Feng Pengzi's departure. The quiet and elegant atmosphere was restored. As soon as she entered the house, Jiang Pingji unceremoniously changed a new tea set for herself. She brewed a cup of tea and sipped it warmly. My father is far away in Chongzhou and has no time to attend my sister's wedding. I'm the only male in the family. If I don't come, who will? Feng Jin said, if that's the case, leave when you can after your sister's wedding. Jiang Pingji could not help but laugh. She said, you and I are considered old friends. Who would chase someone away the moment they meet like you? Feng Jin glanced at Jiang Pingji angrily as if to say, if you don't listen to good people you'll suffer. He laughed helplessly. All right, I won't chase you away. Is that okay? The two talked about the recent years and the atmosphere was harmonious. Feng Ju Huangsong and Suku listened quietly. Occasionally they revealed thoughtful expressions. Feng Ju was the most puzzled. He knew his elder brother's temperament very well. He seemed gentle and graceful as if he could talk to anyone. In reality, Feng Jin was the coldest, alienated and difficult to get close to. On the other hand, Jiang Pingji did not feel like a gentleman like the rumors said. Instead, she seemed to be rebellious. The two of them became good friends. It was a little out of place. Since the capital region is already so chaotic, why did you bring the whole family here? His wife was about to give birth. Feng Jin was really ambitious. The topic went around in circles and returned to the situation in Shangjing. Jiang Pingji thought of Wei Jingxian's pregnancy. Now that chaos was coming, why did Feng Jin come to Shangjing instead of taking his wife to have a good pregnancy in his hometown? If anything happened, he would not be able to get away even if he wanted to. Feng Jin smiled bitterly. He spread his hands and said, this is not something I can decide. Jiang Pingji was puzzled at first, but when she saw Feng Jin's expression, she vaguely understood something. Her starry eyes widened slightly. She asked, the situation has reached such a stage. What else? Feng Jin raised his eyebrows and asked. To put it bluntly, Feng Jin represented the Feng family as a hostage and lived in Shangjing to appease the emperor. The influence of the relatives of the emperor and the power of the eunuchs were the two biting dogs prepared by the emperor to deal with the aristocratic families. In the past few years, the emperor had become more and more muddle-headed, allowing the marriage between the northern borderline and Dongqing to go smoothly. This move made many aristocratic families sense a great change in the atmosphere. In order to protect their families, some people chose to continue to rise and fall in the officialdom, while others pretended to be defeated and slowly retired. Feng Ren's resignation was naturally the latter. However, the emperor did not trust the Feng family at all. Perhaps it was because of this reason that Feng Jin and his wife temporarily lived in Shangjing after the wedding and rarely went out. The situation in the capital region was getting more and more tense, and his wife's belly was getting bigger by the day. This put a lot of pressure on him. The two of them did not discuss this topic in detail. After all, Huang Song was still here and some topics had to be avoided. After staying for a long time, Huang Song vaguely knew that he was not welcome, so he simply found an excuse to leave the tea house. Feng Ju stood up to send him off. Feng Ju said in a low voice, second brother has been under a lot of pressure these days. Don't take it to heart, Bogeo. Although Huang Song was the son of a eunuch and his godfather was the powerful Secretary Huang, Secretary Huang was rather special among the eunuchs. He was also deeply liked by the emperor and did things like selling official positions and titles, but he also secretly extended olive branches to the aristocratic families. Yes, Huang Song's godfather, to put it bluntly, was on the fence. He was on good terms with both sides and did not offend either. If not for this, Fengju would not be friends with Huang Song. Huang Song shook his head, but his eyes kept glancing at the private room. He said in a low voice, "A few days ago, grandfather helped Song get a job. It's related to the guards in the capital region. If second brother Feng encounters any difficulties in Shangjing, feel free to look for me. I'll try my best to help if I can." Fengju nodded secretly and accepted this favor. "I will talk to second brother about this. I thank you on behalf of second brother Bogeo for your kindness." After sending Huang Song away, Feng was slightly relieved and spoke freely. Lanting really shouldn't have come to Shangjing now. Even if he had to find a lame excuse, he should have rejected it. Didn't Lanting notice that the emperor has been finding excuses to summon scholars from various clans to gather in Shangjing? Even the officials of the aristocratic families who are working outside have been summoned. I'm really terrified. Whether it was Jiang Pingji, Feng Jin, or Feng Ju, the aristocratic sons in Shangjing were all hostages. Although the emperor had not revealed his true intentions, this move was enough to make people panic. He's already here. Can he escape in the middle of the night? Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes and snorted. Before coming to Shangjing, more than one person said the same thing to me, but I still came. I'd like to see what he's up to. Feng Jin had a headache. He silently mouthed, "The imperial guards are acting strangely. I'm afraid someone is trying to usurp the throne." Jiang Pingji's eyes turned cold. She instantly understood. The imperial guards were under the control of General Feng. General Feng was a relative who was promoted by the emperor. He was the emperor's confidant. If the imperial guards were to act strangely, it could be that the emperor wanted to attack the aristocratic families and force them to hand over their power. However, Feng Jin added, "I'm afraid someone is trying to usurp the throne." Then the imperial guards' actions were somewhat thought-provoking. Usurp the throne? The princes were fighting fiercely for the throne. Prince Changsho, who had become famous, was eyeing the throne covetously. It was really hard to say who the usurper was. In the end, this is just a show where the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Feng Jin had lived in Shangjing for a period of time. He had a clear understanding of the current situation. However, who is the mantis, the cicada, and the oriole, it all depends on one's ability. Lanting, listen to my advice. Be obedient these days. Put your own safety first. When this period is over, the situation should be clear. Suke heard Feng Jin's sincere and earnest advice. He could not help but look at him with a complicated expression. He had a feeling that this was not a good sign. Would he be slapped in the face by this flag? I know. Jiang Pingji agreed verbally, but only she knew what she was thinking in her heart. After all, the tea house was Prince Changsho's territory. Even if Jiang Pingji could guarantee that the conversation would be discreet, she did not want to talk about such an important topic in someone else's territory. Feng Jin understood. The two of them tacitly stopped the topic. At that moment, Feng Ju returned to the private room. Feng Jin pursed his thin lips into a straight line when he saw his troublesome younger brother. He looked very displeased. Feng Ju was completely oblivious to it. He laughed and sat down. You have to act according to your ability to save others. If you don't have the ability, you will bring trouble to others. Is this what the master at home taught you? Father doesn't like you to hang out with those people from all walks of life, but you don't. That Huang Song's heart is not pure. You call him brother, and today you almost caused trouble. Feng Jin frowned unhappily. He lectured in a flat tone. If Lanting was not present and helped you out, tell me, how do you want to end this? Feng Ju was not afraid of Feng Jin at all. He replied with a smile. I feel that Bogeo has a genuine temperament and is worth befriending. Chapter 359. Feng Jin took a deep breath and asked bluntly. Your so-called true temperament is to drag you down with me when I get into trouble? This annoying little brother of his should grow up a little. How could he count the money after being sold? Huang Song and Feng Pengzi led their men to fight each other. Regardless of whether they won or lost, both sides would have a sense of propriety. No lives would be lost. At most they would just embarrass themselves. However, Huang Song shouted, "Brother Zhu, quickly come and save me." Feng Zhu, who was supposed to stay out of this matter, was dragged into it. To put it bluntly, with Feng Zhu's little bit of martial arts, he would only be sending himself to die if he went over. What help could he provide? Not only did Feng Jin dislike Huang Song for being a eunuch, but he also despised him for dragging Feng Zhu into the mire. Just this action alone was enough for Feng Jin to defame Huang Song for a lifetime. Feng Zhu did not speak. Feng Jin snorted coldly and asked, "Don't be vague about the main point. Answer me. Without Lanting's help, how would you have ended up today?" "Third brother, this is Xianxia. There are hidden dragons and crouching tigers everywhere. You are not allowed to act recklessly." When he thought of Feng Pengzi's previous request for a bet, he was so angry that his chest hurt. What made him even more upset was that Feng Zhu had agreed to it immediately. This brat shouldn't have been released at all. Feng Zhu, on the other hand, had a good temper. He smiled and said, "Don't be angry, second brother. Bogeo won't let me be humiliated." After Feng Jin heard this, he seemed to have thought of something. His expression became strange and conflicted, like an overturned pallet. His fingers trembled, afraid that he would hear some strange words from his younger brother's mouth. Jiang Pingji could tell that the two brothers were talking the same language. She could not help but laugh. She coughed lightly to attract their attention. What Huijie wants to say is that Huang Song has the intention to rope him in. Regardless of whether it's a ploy to gain Huijie's trust, he will try his best to protect Huijie even if he is humiliated, Jiang Pingji explained, dispelling the terrifying thought in Feng Jin's mind. Feng Zhu revealed a relaxed smile and nodded. That's right. Rather than saying that Huang Song had asked Feng Zhu for help, it was more like Feng Zhu was testing Huang Song to see how magnanimous he was. Even without Jiang Pingji's help, Feng Zhu was confident that he could escape unscathed. His brother was worrying too much. Feng Jin had a lot to say, but he didn't know where to start. Feng Jin's face darkened. "You shouldn't have dragged Lanting into this. What would you have done if you had not called out Lanting but some other innocent person? That Feng Langjun has always been a playboy. His actions can't be judged by common sense. Can you guarantee that everything is under control?" It was one thing for him to scam his own brother, but now he even scammed his brother's good friend. Who taught such a brat? Feng Zhu blinked uneasily and said with a faint smile, "If I didn't recognize Brother Lanting, I wouldn't have messed around, would I?" It was precisely because he had recognized it that he was fearless. Feng Jin understood what his younger brother meant. His heart was burning with anger. According to his words, if he recognized it, then he deserved to be tricked? You're the son of the Feng family and he's merely the descendant of a eunuch. Huijie, what exactly do you want? He knew that his younger brother had a wide range of friends and did not care about family status, but Feng Zhu's behavior gave him a bad feeling. Feng Jin criticized Huang Song's background, but Feng Zhu did not comment. This in itself was Huang Song's shortcoming, and it was also a stain that could not be erased. Although what Feng Jin said was the truth, Feng Zhu did not like his brother's habit of judging one's status based on one's family background. As they grew older, the contradiction and division between them became more serious. The founding emperor of Dongqing was an escaped slave, and he even worked as a coachman. The Feng family is also an official, but I don't see my brother saying anything about this. Suddenly, Feng Zhu sneered and the atmosphere instantly dropped to a freezing point. Were these two brothers preparing to fight? As the saying goes, one should not wash one's dirty linen in public. It was better to bring the naughty child home and teach him a lesson. Feng Jin suppressed his anger and returned to his usual calm and gentle self. He apologized to Jiang Pingji solemnly, thinking that he would deal with the naughty child when they got back. My youngest brother is naughty and mischievous. I've embarrassed myself in front of you. Huiyu, don't be angry. Huijie is still young and insensible. He will be fine when he's older. Jiang Pingji did not take the matter to heart. She even had a good impression of Feng Zhu. However, this brat really needed a beating. After meeting, they parted on bad terms. After the Feng brothers left, Suku was still deep in thought. Jiang Pingji asked him, "Are you still thinking about Huiyu and Huijie?" Suku said, "A few years ago I had a few conversations with Feng Langjun. He is not the kind of person who is fixated on family status." "Why is he now?" Jiang Pingji said. "First of all, people change. Huaiyu is now a young man, not an immature boy. How can his thinking remain the same? Secondly, he is not fixated on family status, nor does he look down on people who are not part of the aristocratic families. He just doesn't like Huang Song. Suku was stunned. But just now, Xiaoyu, let's say you have a younger brother. In your eyes, this younger brother is still young and inexperienced, and he needs the protection of an elder brother. One day, a ruffian came from outside. He looked down on everyone from head to toe, but it was this kind of ruffian that made your brother think highly of him. As the elder brother, how could you feel good about it? Jiang Pingji explained with a faint smile. That ruffian was Huang Song. Suku was silent. As an only child, he did not understand the thoughts of a younger brother. Huaiyu does not approve of Huijie and Huang Song's friendship. It is for the good of this younger brother. No matter how many olive branches Huang Song's godfather extended to the aristocratic families, whether they are neutral or fence-sitters, as long as the emperor is wary of the aristocratic families, Huang Song and Huijie will stand against each other. What's the use of a close personal relationship? One may know a person's face but not his heart. Who knows what kind of person Huang Song is behind the scenes? Suku sighed after hearing that. In that case, Feng Langjun has put a lot of thought into it. However, he can't stand his younger brother's rebelliousness. Huijie's first impression of Huaiyu is the strongest, and I'm afraid it will be difficult to change it. Moreover, Huaiyu is indeed prejudiced by family status. This is a common problem among the sons of aristocratic families, and it is also normal. In the eyes of others, Huijie is a bit of a weirdo. Suku recalled what Feng Ju said before and nodded in agreement. It's just a pity. Jiang Pingji was suspicious. What's a pity? That Feng San Longjuan's temperament is compatible with you, Langjun. They were both rebellious. They were born into the aristocratic families, but they did not have a high sense of identity with their social class. They had strong self-awareness. Let's not. If I abduct Huaiyu's precious younger brother, do you think Huaiyu will hate me? Suku was silent. Thinking of Feng Jin's younger brother complex, he felt that it was hard to say. Jiang Pingji brought Suku around the night market. They bought big and small bags of gifts. Not only did they hang all over her hands, but they also hung a lot around her neck. Feng Pongzi, who had been beaten up by Jiang Pingji, limped home with the help of the thugs. Before he even stepped into the house, he was already bawling with tears and snot in his eyes. Chapter 360. On the other side, General Feng had just become a high-ranking official, and his wallet was filled up again. He hummed a tune and drank the tea happily. Just when he was so happy that he forgot himself, a ghastly wail and wolf howl exploded in his ears. Clang, his hand shook and the teacup lid fell to the ground and the tea stained his clothes. What's going on, my little ancestor? General Feng felt sorry for the exquisite tea set, but at the same time he was troubled by the wailing outside. Children's debts, children's debts. Ever since he gave birth to this son, his head was full of lawsuits. General Feng despised this son, but at the same time he loved him dearly. When he looked up, he saw a bloated fellow crawling in from outside the door. This scared General Feng. Go, 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 what demon or evil god? General Feng was so scared that he shrunk his neck. He was not to be blamed for being timid. The person's face was bruised and swollen, and there were 2 purplish circles around his eyes. There were 2 thin red bloodstains under his nostrils, and he looked like a small snake. Looking from afar, he looked like a bloated man with a pig's brain. This monster was speaking in a voice that he was very familiar with. General Feng was stunned. Wasn't this his son's voice? Father, your son's heart is bitter. Feng Pongzi struggled to push away the servant who was supporting him and crawled to his father pitifully. At this moment, General Feng had to face the truth. This unlucky child who was beaten into a pig's head was really his son. Daddy's sweetheart, how did you become like this? He wanted to hold his son's face to see where he was hurt, but he didn't know where he touched the wound. Feng Pongzi grimaced in pain and General Feng didn't dare to act rashly. Feng Pongzi's tears and mucus flowed down his face. Father, it's that damned Huang Song who bullied me again. General Feng was instantly enraged when he heard this. He flipped the tea table beside him with a slap. How dare you? How dare a eunuch's grandson touch my son? I want to ask, how did that eunuch Huang Tan teach his grandson? General Fong was so angry that he could not stop breathing. His own son was beaten by a eunuch's grandson. Where could he put his face? Fong Pengzi continued to weep and wipe away the snot and tears on his face with his right hand. Father, it's not just Huang Song. There are other bastards. Fong Pengzi had always looked down on Huang Song. No one was more noble than the other, but he was the one who could become the disciple of a great scholar. The two of them had their fair share of conflicts in private. Some of them had won and some of them had lost. However, this was the first time they had suffered such a huge loss. Who else besides Huang Song? General Fong had a fierce face and his palms, which were as big as a cattail leaf fan, were covered with thick calluses. Coupled with his burly and obese body and his fierce expression, he looked somewhat dignified. But everyone knew that General Fong was of humble birth. Before he became Marquis Chenjen, he was a street peddler. Fong Pengzi said vaguely, "There's another kid. I don't know where he came from." General Fong was silent for a while. Although he felt sorry for his son, he was not blind. There was something wrong with Fong Pengzi's attitude. It was obvious that he was hiding something. This made him more cautious. He simply called his son's lackey over and asked him in detail. After a detailed inquiry, General Fong almost clutched his chest and breathed his last. "Evil creature. Who asked you to provoke them?" The Fong family of Xianxia was an existence that even the emperor was wary of. Who gave this kid the guts to do so? However, the Fong family had already retired. There was no one in the court, so there was no need to be too afraid. General Fong was not worried about the Fong family. He was worried about Lu Xi and Chongzhou. Fortunately, his son did not really bully Lu Xi's son. If he had really stripped Lu Xi's clothes, the whole of Dongqing would be turned upside down. Fong Pengzi was indignant. "Did I get beaten up by Huang Song for nothing? You got beaten up. Can't you find a chance to fight back? Aren't you usually quite capable?" General Fong was so angry that his beard curled up. Fong Pengzi was speechless. He had no problem sneaking up on Huang Song, but he really could not beat Jiang Pingji. "If you don't get back at me, I'll look for my aunt to get justice for me." The aunt that Fong Pengzi mentioned was the Empress, the crown prince's mother. When General Fong heard this, he was infuriated. Outsiders did not know, but how could he not know? His sister did not come from a good family background and did not have outstanding looks. Ever since she gave birth to the crown prince, she did not have much love left. The emperor was also greedy and lecherous. There was no shortage of young and beautiful women by his side. The old and fading empress was invisible in the emperor's harem. If the emperor did not need to promote his relatives, the crown prince would still be alive. Perhaps the empress would have been dethroned. "Stop. You evil creature, come back here." Army General Fong stretched out his huge palm and directly dragged his son back, lest he really ran to the empress to complain. "I can't take this lying down." Fong Pengzi struggled. In the end, he simply sat on the ground and stretched out his legs to make a scene. "You don't love me anymore." General Fong's expression turned purple from holding back his anger. In the end, he had no choice but to go to the emperor to complain because he really felt sorry for his son. However, Fong Pengzi was one step too late. Huang Song was very cunning. He knew that this matter could not be solved easily, so he complained to his adoptive grandfather early on and explained everything clearly. The grandfather and grandson quickly finalized a plan. They gave the emperor a heads-up in advance and pushed the blame to Fong Pengzi. As mentioned before, the emperor liked eunuchs more than relatives who had a big appetite. In his opinion, this was just a small matter. Wasn't it normal for two juniors to have a conflict? Secretary Huang had just given the heads-up when General Fong went to the palace to complain. This behavior made him very unhappy. In terms of figuring out the emperor's will, how could General Fong compare to Huang Tan, who served the emperor? In the end, the father and son of the Fong family were disgraced. Huang Song had achieved a small victory, but his friend Feng Ju did not have it so easy. Feng Jin would not make a scene, nor would he scold him. However, he would stare at him coldly and exert mental pressure. Under such cold violence, Feng Ju gradually could not sit still anymore. "What's so good about Huang Song?" Feng Jin opened his mouth slowly when the hot tea was cold. "You and I both know that the 9 states and 5 countries will not be stable for many years. We don't know when the world will be in chaos and heroes will rise. But tell me, what capital does Huang Song have to compete? More importantly, what capital did Huang Song have to make Feng Ju look favorably on him? Brother, you have a better future by yourself than by investing in Huang Song. Speaking of connections, Huang Song's adoptive grandfather was a eunuch. He had more enemies than friends in the court. Speaking of money, Huang Tan had made a lot of money by selling official titles. Otherwise, he would not have been able to buy an official position for Huang Song at such a high price. But did the Feng family lack money? Speaking of official positions, Huang Song was the patrol officer of Shangjing, which was bought at a high price. It sounded nice, but his duties were similar to those of urban management. He was only in charge of trivial matters. Speaking of fief, there was no need to consider this question. Feng Ju wanted to dodge it, but Feng Jin would not let him go so easily. Chapter 361. Connections, wealth, status, official title, territory. In Feng Ju's opinion, these were all external things. If one managed them well, they would naturally be there. A low starting point did not mean that one was destined to fail. If the person one was loyal to was a pig, even if one earned mountains of gold and oceans of silver, it would all be wasted in the end. On the contrary, if one had a godly teammate, even if one was poor, one would still succeed in the end. Feng Ju knew this very well. When choosing people, one did not look at the other party's conditions, but only at their temperament and ability. Seeing that Feng Ju intended to discuss in detail, Feng Jin restrained his negative emotions and maintained a fair and objective attitude. What do you mean? Feng Ju said, I've tested Bogeo a few times. Other than his slightly criticized background, he has no other shortcomings. He has the heart to stabilize the country, and he also has a heart to pity the people. He is not restricted by family background when choosing people, and he does not have the problem of being headstrong and self-opinionated. I think he is quite good. Now that the world was rotten to the core, the only way was to rebuild and reshuffle all the forces. Taking advantage of the chaotic world, they could promote a bold and loving ruler. Only then could they usher in a truly prosperous era. Otherwise, the world would just have a different surname. Feng Ju had a good plan, and Feng Jin could understand his desire, but he still laughed coldly and poured cold water on his younger brother. Now that Huang Song is poor, his true temperament is still uncertain. Other than his mouth, what else does he have? As long as he understands what you like, what can't he say? Feng Jin was sullen. Even if Huang Song was indeed a good candidate, he should not have decided so early. At least he had to wait and see. You said that Huang Song has many merits, but in my opinion he is not as reliable as Lanting. Feng Ju frowned. Although he had heard his elder brother mention Jiang Pingji, such praise was rare. Elder brother, you think highly of him? Feng Ju asked. Although he had different views from his elder brother, he trusted his brother's judgment. If even a picky person like Feng Jin said it was good, there must be no problem. Feng Ju did not know much about Lu Shi. Putting aside his character and temperament, his external conditions were indeed much better than Huang Song's. He was born into an aristocratic family, and his father, Lu Shi, was the governor of Chongzhou. He had a ready-made territory. Even if Chongzhou was close to the 3 tribes of the northern borderline, the terrain was steep and it was near strong enemies, it was still considered a place to settle down and have a foundation. Not only that, but Lu Shi had also studied in Langyi for 3 years, which was a famous institution of higher learning in the world. No matter how Lu Shi's results in the academy were, after 3 years he had been gilded with a layer of gold. Not to say that he was knowledgeable, but at least he was better than Huang Song, who was half illiterate. When the two of them were put side by side, Huang Song did not have the slightest ability to resist in terms of external conditions. Feng Jin's expression froze. After a while he understood the hidden meaning behind his brother's question. After a long time he shook his head. Lanting is not that ambitious. It's impossible. Lu Shi was indeed a good person. Everything about him was good except for his gender. He was born a girl. Feng Jin was not bound by the prejudice of the world, but he had never thought of letting a woman ascend to the throne. It was simply unbelievable. Feng Ju instinctively felt that his elder brother was lying, but he also understood Feng Jin's attitude. A long journey tests a horse's stamina, and time reveals a man's heart. It's better to be cautious about this kind of thing that will cost you your life. Feng Jin's expression softened a lot and he advised his younger brother, I'm not stopping you nor am I biased against Huang Song. I just hope that you can be more cautious about this kind of thing. The world is not completely chaotic yet and it's still too early to make any plans. Why not watch from the sidelines and wait for the situation to change? To put it bluntly, it was still too early to get involved. Feng Ju pursed his thin lips and his hands on his knees slightly clenched. His heart was full of struggle. Apart from this, if you think that Huang Song is a worthy friend, then treat him as an ordinary friend. Don't get too involved. It was better to let it go. His younger brother was a stubborn brat. The more Feng Jin tried to stop him, the more he might do something extreme in a moment of hot-headedness. He might completely run to Huang Song's boat and not get off. Instead of that, it was better for both sides to take a step back. Starting with a friend who could get along as an equal would also give Feng Ju more time to think about Huang Song's character and carefully consider his own future. I understand. Feng Ju sighed softly. His relationship with Huang Song was not so good that they could wear the same underwear. Naturally, his brother was more important. As the two brothers spoke, a series of slow but heavy footsteps came from afar. After a while, a gentle female voice was heard. Husband, what are you talking about? Why are you so intimate? A few years had passed and Wei Jingxian, who was already a wife, was no longer as immature as before. Her eyes were gentle and full of the charm of a mature woman. Now he had a big belly and his whole face was a lot more plump. He looked more plump than before. Pregnancy was tough but she had a good mentality. The servant took good care of her so she was more energetic than before. Feng Jin looked at her belly and his eyebrows twitched. He quickly got up and went forward to support her. He was also afraid. Every time he saw her big belly he felt his whole body heavy, and his nerves could not help but tense up. Second sister-in-law, come and control second brother. Feng Ju bowed and waited for Feng Jin and his brother to sit down before sitting down again. He complained half-truthfully, second brother and I haven't seen each other for a long time. We should be catching up with each other but he just won't let go of his studies and wants to test us. Wei Jingxian pinched her handkerchief and covered her mouth with a chuckle. Husband often says that youngest brother is talented and smart, but he may not be able to test you. Second sister-in-law is really good at talking. It's comfortable to hear. Unlike second brother who only reprimands. Feng Jin glared at him and the two brothers exchanged a few glances. As they grew older, the relationship between Feng Jin and Feng Ju gradually became tense. Wei Jingxian found out not long after she married into the family, but she could not say much due to her identity. She could only try to ease their relationship. I've prepared some light wine and dishes. I wonder if husband and youngest brother will do us the honor? You're heavy. You can leave these small things to the servants in the future. You don't have to do it yourself. Feng Jin urged her earnestly, but whether Wei Jingxian was willing to do it or not was not something he could decide. They brewed tea, boiled wine, and drank 2 cups with exquisite dishes. The two enjoyed the meal and temporarily forgot about what happened just now. Feng Ju secretly looked at the heavy second sister-in-law, then looked at second brother who was frowning slightly. His heart softened. It was better for him to listen to his second brother's advice and observe the situation from the sidelines for now. The sky was dark. Feng Ju stayed in the guest room and Feng Jin and his wife also prepared to sleep. Before going to bed, Feng Jin suddenly thought of something. It's the wedding of the 4th prince and the daughter of the Lu family's concubine. It's reasonable for us to give them a small gift. Wei Jingxian touched her belly and did not react for a moment. Feng Jin said again, the daughter of the Lu family's concubine is Lanting's sister. Although they were not relatives, Feng Jin and Lu Shi were good friends, and he was also a friend with Wu Majun, so he should give him a gift. Chapter 362. The governor of Lu province is busy. As the second son, Lanting has to send his sister off. Feng Jin turned around and sighed. But she shouldn't have come at this time. I don't know if she can get out of this mess. Wei Jingxian wanted to say something but stopped. The room was dark, so Feng Jin didn't notice the hesitation on her face. He didn't hear Wei Jingxian's reply for a long time. He reached out and touched her tight belly. Is the child bothering you again? They had been married for 2 to 3 years. He knew Wei Jingxian's stubborn temper. When she was still young, her legs would always cramp at night. She didn't want to disturb his rest, so she gritted her teeth and endured it. Towards such a wife, Feng Jin loved and respected her, and the relationship between the two steadily improved. No. I just suddenly thought of the past and felt a little emotional. Past? Feng Jin rarely heard his wife talk about the past. He smiled and asked, "Is it related to Lanting?" Wei Jingxian secretly bit her lips with a troubled look on her face. She didn't know that Feng Jin already knew Lu Shi's gender. Even if Feng Jin and Lu Shi were friends, she was Lu Shi's former fiancée. She had been engaged since she was a child. Wei Jingxian couldn't figure out Feng Jin's attitude towards this matter, so she had always avoided mentioning Lu Shi. Wei Jingxian hesitated and tried to sound calm. "Yes, it's related. I loved to eat when I was young, so I was round and a little fat. But I was naughty and couldn't calm down. I wanted to avoid the maids and play everywhere. One day when no one was looking, I climbed up the pear tree outside the courtyard. I climbed up but couldn't get down. I cried for a long time." Feng Jin smiled. And then, "I don't know if it's because children are similar in nature. The maids looked for me and almost cried, but Lanting found me. I was worried that I would be punished by the elders in the family, so they didn't let me ask the adults for help. But I didn't dare to go down. I couldn't do anything, so she said she wanted to be my cushion. She said she would take responsibility if I fell." Wei Jingxian smiled mischievously. "Madam must have been very cute when you were young. What happened after you jumped down? Was you safe and sound? Since it was round and smooth, it must have hit Lu Shi when it jumped down." Thinking of that scene, Feng Jin felt inexplicably pleased. Wei Jingxian said, "I'm fine, but Lanting's muscles and bones have been hurt." Feng Jin held back his laughter and teased, "If that's the case, I should prepare a small gift for Lanting tomorrow to thank her for her kindness." Wei Jingxian was startled. She thought that Feng Jin was angry, but he didn't sound angry at all. She probed and said half-truthfully, "Could it be that my husband is jealous?" Feng Jin asked suspiciously, "Why should your husband be jealous?" "He was jealous of a girl." "Was he that kind of person?" "No." At this moment, Feng Jin's smart brain realized that the couple was talking about the same thing. He could not help but laugh. Wei Jingxian was also dumbfounded. She didn't understand what was so funny about her words. "Go to sleep. It's rare that the child isn't bothering you. Have a good sleep." Feng Jin kept his smile and did not explain to Wei Jingxian. The couple did not speak for a night and slowly fell asleep. Nowadays, Shangjing was in a state of panic. The ordinary people did not know the inside story and continued to live ordinary lives. It was as if they were living in a peaceful era. The intrigues of the nobles did not affect them at all. Only those with a keen sense of smell could discover the undercurrents under the calm surface. It was not until Wuma Jun's wedding that the calm surface began to show a slight, invisible crack. Apart from the wedding of Princess Yaina and the second prince a few years ago, this wedding was a rare joyous occasion for the Dongqing royal family. The gimmick of a royal wedding was very attractive to the audience in the live streaming room. Waha milk. #rubbing face. It's the streamer's sister getting married. Why am I so nervous as if it's my own wedding? Inyang Kuaixin. The person above feels the same. I'm very nervous too. The streamer did not attend the second prince's wedding. Now that the person getting married is the streamer's sister, she can watch the ancient royal wedding in person. If she watches it, it's the same as us watching it. There was no feudal empire in the audience's dimension. The royal family was an unfamiliar word to the ordinary people. With their limited imagination, they could not imagine how grand an empire's wedding would be. During the few days when her sister was getting married, Jiang Pingji was very low-key. She stayed in the residence most of the time and only went out to visit a few times. Most of the people she visited were Lu Shi's friends in the officialdom. The content of the conversation was also boring and had no nutritional value. It was like the calm before the storm. As the date of the wedding approached, the atmosphere in the whole of Shangjing became more and more strange. Early that morning, Jiang Pingji started the live streaming. 150,000 viewers flooded in instantly. With Taksha's help, Jiang Pingji washed her hands carefully and put on a festive dress. She glanced at the bullet screen in the live streaming room and smiled faintly. "Host V, am I handsome?" As soon as she posted the bullet screen, her fans responded one after another. Various amounts of gifts flowed in like water. Therefore Jiang Pingji, who was elegant and more handsome than the groom, was ready to go. She picked up the sandalwood fan in her hand and prepared to make things difficult for the groom. The wedding customs in Dongqing were like that. If the groom wanted to marry the bride, he had to go through 81 difficulties. In the words of the audience in the live streaming room, it was actually making trouble for the groom. However, compared to the vulgar behavior that the audience in the live streaming room complained about, making trouble in the current era was very elegant and difficult. Jiang Pingji chose a good angle. The audience in the live streaming room was dumbfounded. Dora aiming. I always feel that if the single men went to the era of the host, they were destined to be single for the rest of their lives. There were many obstacles. Not only did they test the 4 arts, but they also required the groom to recite poetry, dance and play with ink. They taught him about the classics and history. Because Wu Majun was a prince, it was inevitable that he would go easy on the groom. These tests were set in advance. He had the strategy. No matter how difficult or tricky the questions were, he could solve them easily. The high-spirited Wu Majun had passed through many obstacles. His elegant demeanor and excellent literary talent had left a good impression on him. Every time he passed a challenge, there would always be people cheering and praising him. If one did not know better, one would think that Wu Majun was the reincarnation of when Xing Jiang Pingji was in charge of the last challenge. The luxurious and exquisite house behind her was the place where Lu Huan would get married. Only with Jiang Pingji's permission could Wu Majun escort the bride away. That was the most exciting moment of the wedding. Planting please. Wu Majun was not interested in Lu Huan. After all, she was young and her bones had not even developed. What was interesting about her? Chapter 363. Jiang Pingji nodded slightly, took a deep breath and said sadly, "My sister is spoiled at home, so it's inevitable that she'll be a little willful. Jingzi, if you marry her, please forgive her. Now that the auspicious moment is here, I won't be the bad guy. I just need you to promise me one thing, that you'll treat her the same for the rest of your life regardless of her status. If you promise me this as her brother, I'll be at ease and entrust her to you." Wu Majun solemnly bowed and said, "Don't worry, Lanting. I'll never let her down for the rest of my life." Good. Jiang Pingji turned to the side, her eyes filled with reluctance. Wu Majun was secretly happy he had passed this hurdle. Even though she didn't make things difficult for Wu Majun, her concern for his sister's lifelong happiness still moved many people. Even if they didn't say anything on the surface, they couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. What a good heart. It was normal for an older brother to dislike his brother-in-law, but would his sister be happy if he kept making things difficult for his brother-in-law? His brother-in-law was broad-minded, so he naturally wouldn't mind his brother-in-law making things difficult for him. If his brother-in-law was narrow-minded, he might implicate his sister. The wedding had already progressed to this stage, so it was impossible to go back on it. No matter how his brother-in-law made things difficult for him, his sister was already his. Instead of racking his brains to make things difficult for him, it was better to earnestly instruct his brother-in-law. With such imagination, Jiang Pingji's image as a good brother suddenly became three-dimensional. The audience in the streaming room watched the scene on the screen and couldn't help but complain. Lao Siji Lianming. If I didn't know the inside story, I might have really been fooled by the streamer's acting. What good brother. This guy is simply a beast in human form, okay? My has a voice. Although I know it's fake, I give 82 points for the streamer's performance just now and give the rest to her in the form of 666. Even though I know she's showing off her acting skills, I still feel that this is a good brother who thinks for his sister. He can't help but let his sister get married, but he has to bear the pain and think for his sister's sake. He can only watch helplessly as the outsider takes away the soft and fragrant girl. Can hear the voice not, "Bah, your imagination is too good. The host is obviously a hypocrite wearing a white lotus, but in your imagination she is a cute siscon. The shameful thing is, I actually believed in your nonsense." Jiang Pingji did not care about the ridicule that flooded the bullet screen. She stared blankly at Lu Huan, who was being supported by the matron of honor. Dongqing's wedding attire was different from what the audience in the live streaming room knew. Although the surrounding attire was a festive red, the groom's wedding attire was a very heavy black. The bride's wedding attire was mainly green and purplish. The clothes were layered and the colors were from the inside to the outside, from light to dark. Due to the different status of the newlyweds, there was a strict classification of wedding clothes. The Empress was the most precious. There were a total of 18 levels, and the colors and patterns of each level were strictly regulated. As the princess consort of the prince, Lu Huan's wedding dress was only lower than that of the Empress and the crown princess. Her rank was higher than that of the princes, and she had to wear a total of 12 layers. Nowadays, there were no phoenix coronets and robes that the audience in the live streaming room was familiar with. There was also no such thing as a red veil. However, when Lu Huan carefully walked out, Jiang Pingji clearly saw that the bullet screen in the live streaming room had all turned into exclamation marks. Hairpins, ornaments, each of them had 12 as their number. Her ink-like hair was tied up high and adorned with a gorgeous jade crown. Perfect flowers carved from jade adorned her hair. She was as charming as a real flower that had just been plucked from a branch. The pearls and jade on her head were dazzling. Some of the more knowledgeable audience members wanted to take a screenshot of the scene and zoom in to take a closer look at the ornaments on Lu Huan's head. Every time he recognized one of them, his heart would twitch. Finally, some of the audience members lamented. How is this a wedding? This is simply putting the most precious thing on her head, and it's so beautiful. Ingyang Kuaixian, I really want to hold a wedding like this. I wonder if Taoyang will release a luxurious wedding package after today's live streaming? If there is, I must drag my boyfriend to take a photo of it. I feel that it's more pretentious than a wedding dress. Can hear the voice not? Taoyang is omnipotent. After Su Ke's wedding, one of Taoyang's wedding stores immediately released the same package. I checked the sales later. It's selling 45,000 sets a month. It's really popular. Jiang Pingji's sharp eyes saw the contents of the bullet screen. She secretly raised her eyebrows. A businessman is indeed a businessman. He's good at grasping business opportunities. Lao Siji Lianming, that wedding company? The simplified version costs $99.99. I saw the customer's reply and I almost died laughing. Look at how beautiful Su Ku and Xuanmei are. They will be together forever. But the buyer's show is simply a joke between a married couple. At this time, another audience member ridiculed. Grapevine Jiazi Dolai. I agree with the person above. Do you know how expensive the wedding ornaments on the streamer sister's head are? I'm in this line of work. Calculating the current market price, it's at least in the hundreds of millions. How can Taoyang's imitations, which cost a few dollars, be auctioned off for hundreds of millions? That's just the headwear. It doesn't include the cost of the wedding dress. Even so, there were still some greedy audience members who went to search for Taoyang. When the keywords were entered, a few pages of information immediately popped up. Unbeknownst to Jiang Pingji, this strange streaming room had created a huge storm in their dimension. Many industries had been born and many unemployed people had been saved. Of course, after these people became rich, they did not forget to reward Jiang Pingji. The streaming room was noisy. Jiang Pingji saw that there were too many bullet screen comments. She simply blocked them for a while. She raised her hand and took Lu Huan's hand. In the future you will marry into the royal family and live a good life. If you suffer any grievances you must tell your brother, Jiang Pingji said sadly. Her tone was a little choked and full of reluctance. Those who heard it were very touched. Lu Huan was vigilant, but she also knew that she could not undermine Jiang Pingji. She bowed to Jiang Pingji. Her eyes were filled with tears. Brother, take care. Facing Jiang Pingji, who was an Oscar winner, Wu Majun and Lu Huan were at most popular actresses who had won the Newcomer Award. Their acting skills could be seen at a glance. Especially when Jiang Pingji was showing off her acting skills at that moment, and Lu Huan was absent-minded. Naturally, she was at a disadvantage. A royal wedding was naturally different from an ordinary one. If it was an ordinary person, the procedure would take a long time, but Wu Majun was a prince. He had the upper hand. He easily welcomed the bride, Lu Huan, onto the luxurious wedding sedan that was carried by 8 people. He then mounted the horse in high spirits. Although the scale of the wedding was not comparable to that of Princess Yaina, the bride, Lu Huan's dowry was talked about enthusiastically by the people of Shangjing. 10 miles of red makeup, it lived up to its name. There were 100 tables of banquets in front of the fourth prince's residence. There was a dazzling array of seafood, delicacies and exotic fruits. Although the cuisine in ancient times was not as developed as in the streaming room, they had sufficient ingredients. In their world, the protected wild animals, national protected animals and world-class protected animals. In this era, as long as it was edible, it could all be served on the table. Coupled with the meticulous cooking of famous chefs and all kinds of lifelike carvings, it was simply gorgeous. There were 100 tables of banquets. As a member of the bride's family, Jiang Pingji naturally had to be treated as a distinguished guest. Chapter 364. Langjun, you can't bear to part with the second Yangzi? Su Ku had already left his lowly status and found a seat in the corner as Lu Shi's right-hand man. He was eating delicious food. Seeing Jiang Pingji's unhappy expression, he was afraid that she would do something against the rules, so he secretly tested her. Why would I be reluctant? Jiang Pingji glanced at him and said, I just suddenly remembered something. A few years ago, the second prince and the princess of the northern borderline got married, and Shangjing was just as lively. It was a world of ice and snow and 100 banquets were held. The atmosphere was heated. Now that I think about it, it coincides with today's scene. Su Ku was silent. Of course he knew what happened that year. Shangjing had a severe snowstorm, but the wedding of the second prince and the princess of the northern borderline was still lively. 100 banquets were held for 9 days and 9 nights, but almost no one touched the food. In a world of ice and snow, the food was not tasty when it was cold. Not far away, people starved to death. The back of the second prince's mansion was full of food and buckets of swill. Thinking about these things, it would be strange if his Langjun could be happy. The 100 banquets were supposed to be a joyous occasion for the whole city, for the people, for the celebration of the new couple. In fact, ordinary people could not even get close to it, let alone sit at the table. Langjun, today is the second Yangzi's big day. Even if you... Sai, you should be happy. After being interrupted, Su Ku suddenly lost his appetite to eat. Like Su Ku, the bridegroom also lost his appetite. Uma Jun was forced to drink 2 glasses of wine as a gesture. He walked into the bridal chamber with a faint smell of alcohol. Night had fallen, but when he looked at the bride sitting by the bed with her young face and dry body, he could not arouse any sexual interest at all. The maid helped Lu Huan wash off her makeup and remove her heavy headwear. Without the concealment of heavy makeup, her face looked even more youthful and tender. Even if her facial features were very good and one could tell at a glance that she was a beauty with unlimited potential in the future, Lu Huan was still too young. She looked like an unripe fruit. How could she be eaten? Uma Jun was unwilling, but that was the wedding procedure. Not wanting to consummate their marriage was akin to slapping the bride in the face. If Lu Huan's family found out, who knew what kind of rumors would spread? Lu Huan timidly glanced at her husband, her face instantly flushed with embarrassment. Uma Jun was not a gentleman, but he was very thick-skinned. He was the best at deceiving ignorant girls. The two of them drank the nuptial wine. Even though the alcohol content of the wine was not high, Lu Huan felt a little dizzy. Her whole body felt as if she was walking on cotton, light as a feather. Uma Jun secretly frowned, his pursed lips tightened. According to the customs of the royal family, some drugs would be added to the nuptial wine to help the newlyweds get rid of their shyness and unfamiliarity so that they could enter the bridal chamber. Lu Zhai could not taste it, but Wu Ma Jun, who had been through hundreds of battles and was not afraid of meat or vegetables, could taste it. Wu Ma Jun said considerately, "You must be hungry. Let's eat something before we settle down." Although Lu Huan was young, being young had its own taste. Anyway, he was not the one who was at a disadvantage. Lu Huan's ears heated up. She shyly nodded and secretly tightened her grip on a bottle in her sleeves. She had asked someone to secretly search for this thing in the little slut Huijun's room. Huijun was mysterious and took this thing very seriously. Lu Huan, who had persecutory delusions, thought that this was something Huijun used to harm her. However, after the doctor examined it, he said that it was a pregnancy aid medicine. Lu Huan did not believe it and secretly invited a few doctors to examine it. The conclusion they came to was the same. It was harmless to the body. Many precious medicines were used to help a woman get pregnant. At first, Lu Huan did not want to use this thing, but she could not help but be tempted. After that, she quietly ground some medicinal powder and mixed it with food. After a few transfers, she gave it to a woman who did odd jobs. She had been married for 3 years and had been abandoned by her husband. Her status in the family was worrying. Lu Huan ordered her trusted servant girl to secretly bribe a cook. The cook took advantage of the night to secretly defile the woman. After a month, she actually had a pulse of pregnancy. This all happened on the way to Shangjing. It was done secretly and carefully so it did not arouse suspicion. Lu Huan was determined to capture her husband's heart and gain a foothold in the fourth prince's residence. Naturally, she valued children. When she was having breakfast this morning, she had already secretly consumed the easy pregnancy pill and gotten someone to send Huijun some food mixed with cold elements. In this way, she did not believe that she would not be able to give birth to a son before Huijun. Lu Huan and Wumajun ate some food. She said charmingly, "It's late. Husband, do you want to settle down?" Perhaps it was the nuptial wine that had taken effect. Wumajun felt his whole body heat up. He nodded in agreement and carried her to the wedding bed. After a round of sex, the medicinal effect in Wumajun's body had subsided. He got up and called for the servants to prepare hot soup. He looked at Lu Huan, who was sleeping soundly in his arms with traces of tears on her face. He secretly pouted. Her shriveled body was like a man's. "Your servant will serve your highness as you bathe." Wumajun was feeling that this wedding night was extremely boring. A refreshing fragrance wafted into his nose, causing his abdomen to tighten. When he listened carefully, the woman's voice seemed to be scratching his heart. It was itchy and made his heart tremble. Come in," Wumajun answered vaguely. A graceful figure walked out from behind the curtain with a basin of water in her hands. Her steps were light and graceful. Her clothes were clean and neat, and there was not the slightest bit of extra embellishment in her hair. She was like a beautiful lotus flower standing in the cool breeze, but her starry eyes were captivating as if they could hook away one's soul. Her plump lips were red without any makeup, making one want to lean forward and taste them. "What's your name?" The other party seemed to be confused by the rude question. She lowered her head and said timidly, "Your servant's name is Huijun." "Good name." Wumajun's eyes were glued to her full and perky chest. He asked again, "Are you a servant girl in the residence?" "No, your servant is the second Xianxia, the fourth imperial concubine's dowry." Towards the end, she was practically biting her lower lip as she spoke. A dowry girl had the duty to serve the male master. After Wumajun heard this, his eyes lit up. However, he was a hypocrite. He could not hug her directly. Instead, he put on airs and asked, "Why haven't I seen you before?" Huijun said, "Tonight is the wedding night of your highness and the imperial concubine." At the mention of this, Wumajun was in a slightly bad mood. However, when he thought of the peerless beauty in front of him, his lower abdomen could not help but tighten. "Come here and help me bathe." "Yes." Huijun soaked a towel in hot water. Just as she was about to help him wipe his back, he suddenly grabbed her wrist. Wumajun felt as if he was grabbing a soft and boneless hand. The skin was smoother and smoother than a peeled egg. As the two of them got closer, the seeping fragrance became clearer. Chapter 365. Wumajun did not pretend to be a gentleman. He directly dragged her into the bathtub and engulfed Huijun's cries of surprise and protests. That night he truly knew the wonderful feeling of yin and yang harmonizing. Even his soul was trembling. He seemed to have unlimited energy. He tossed and turned Huijun. He could not enjoy himself to his heart's content. He wished he could die on top of her. When the sky brightened, he could only regretfully hug the exhausted person and kiss her gently. He lamented that the night was too short. Huijun lay in his arms like a puddle of water. She looked tired, but her body was not so tired. She even felt refreshed. It was only then that she understood why her Langjun said he could make her a beauty who brought disaster to the country. She was a prostitute, but she was like a virgin last night. She even deceived Wumajun, who had experienced hundreds of battles. She should have hated the matter between men and women, but after the clouds and rain stopped, she only felt comfortable all over, as if she had been greatly nourished. Last night was supposed to be a good night for your highness and the princess consort. But your highness and I fooled around. If the princess consort knew, Huijun frowned worriedly. Her eyes seemed to bear thousands of words that she had not finished. Jun said, "Don't worry. It's only right and proper for you to serve me. If she's jealous, she's not magnanimous." Huijun was still worried, but she nodded obediently. When Jun saw this, his heart burned with lust again. His hands could not help but move everywhere. In the past he thought that Xianxia was a great woman. She used all kinds of tricks to serve him until he was on cloud 9. She was bold and unrestrained when it came to matters between men and women. She was very compatible with him. Now that he thought about it, compared to the peerless beauty in front of him, Princess Xianxia was like a broken bag on the ground that was leaking air in all directions. The feeling that had once fascinated him had also become nauseating. Huijun could make him anxious and furious without doing anything. If she was willing to give in and cooperate with him and whisper softly, he would be as happy as a deity. One could imagine that the two of them could not help but fool around for a while. The sun was high in the sky. Lu Huan woke up from her beautiful dream. Her side was already cold. She supported her tired body and asked eagerly, "Where's your highness?" Her trusted maids had ugly expressions on their faces. They knelt down one after another, not daring to speak. Lu Huan had a bad premonition. When she received the news that Jun had given Huijun the biggest courtyard besides the main courtyard, her ashen face was almost twisted into a ball. Her newly grown nails were broken again. She was so angry that she flipped over the table beside her, causing it to crash into the ground. After the first night of the wedding, the groom, who was supposed to be intimate with the bride, was fooling around with a stunning beauty. Even though Jun had issued a gag order, the inner house was different from other places. How could it be stopped with a single order? Before the third day, the news of Jun favoring Huijun had secretly spread. Huijun's appearance was also spread by gossipers. Jiang Pingji received first-hand information. She could not help but admire Huijun's swift and decisive methods. She had seduced Jun on the first day of marriage. She was very efficient. However, the livestream viewers wailed when they heard the news. Lao Ciji Lianmeng, a good and fresh cabbage has been taken by a pig. Tudu Feiqiu, my goddess has been taken by a pig. I'm crying. Headset electric current sound, F***ck, it's a breeding pig. My heart aches so much. Linglong Mibao, although I knew this day would come, I'm still very upset. My goddess has been defiled by Jun streamer, I kinda hate you now. My goddess Huijun, my heart hurts. There were all kinds of comments on the bullet screen. Some were wailing, some were complaining about being lovelorn, and some were criticizing Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji only comforted them perfunctorily. The livestream viewers became even more rowdy. Jun had been caught. Would the emperor, who had no scruples, be far away? According to what Jiang Pingji knew, the emperor was absurd and unruly. Not only did he search for beauties to fill his harem, but he also coveted the wives and concubines of the ministers. It was not the first time he had forcefully taken the ministers' wives. Every time he went to the ministers' residences for a short visit, he would sleep with the ministers' wives while he was sitting. After the wedding, they still had to go home. As Lu Shi was not around, it was just a formality. At first, Jun was scared witless. He was afraid that he would make Jiang Pingji unhappy if he mistreated Lu Huan. But as time went by, Jiang Pingji did not react at all. He asked his scoundrels to sound her out. The news he got made him heave a long sigh of relief. A married daughter was like spilled water, not to mention that Lu Huan was only Lu Shi's sister. The matters between husband and wife were discussed behind closed doors. No matter how wide the brother-in-law was, he could not meddle in the affairs of his younger sister and son-in-law. With this guarantee, Jun treated Lu Huan with respect on the surface. But behind her back, he fooled around with Huijun and indulged himself in pleasure. Huijun slowly revealed the strong side of her character. Jun almost drowned in her. He liked everything about her, including Huijun's character. When the two of them were having sex, he even loved her strong side. How could a masochist be nurtured? Although Huijun was not the fourth princess's wife, she lived a more comfortable life than Lu Huan. She was like a precious flower that was carefully watered. She became more beautiful and fresh by the day. It also made Lu Huan jealous and sinister. In less than half a month she had completely charmed Wu Majun and gained a foothold in the fourth prince's residence. Lu Huan could not do anything about it. The jealousy in her heart grew stronger by the day. She wanted to lay her hands on Huijun, but the woman was as cunning as a loach. Wu Majun was protecting her from the side. She, the legitimate wife of the fourth prince, was acting like a shameless concubine. This thought made her so angry that her stomach hurt. I can't touch her. Am I supposed to let this slut climb over my head and behave atrociously? Lu Huan was so angry that she twisted her handkerchief. Other than the night of the wedding, Wu Majun did not stay in her room. As the princess's wife, she had no reason to stop Wu Majun from seeking pleasure and continuing the family line. However, she could not tolerate her husband fooling around with another woman, and a woman of low birth at that. She could not take it lying down. Lu Huan was filled with hatred. If only I could get this woman out of here legitimately. However, what reason could she use to get her out of here and make Wu Majun speechless? This thought haunted her and kept her awake for the whole night. Until one day when she was summoned to the palace to see the Empress. She saw the beautiful palace maids and came up with an evil plan. In Dongqing, who had more power than the emperor. As long as she secretly match-made Huijun and the emperor and made her lose her chastity, would Huijun still have the face to pester her husband? Even Jiang Pingji did not know that the opportunity that Huijun could not find was delivered to her by Lu Huan. After Wu Majun and Lu Huan's wedding, Jiang Pingji stayed in Shangjing for more than half a month. She was about to pack her luggage and leave when she unexpectedly received a summons from Shangyang Palace. It was also the first time that Jiang Pingji saw the emperor of Dongqing up close. Faced with the sudden summons, Suka's expression changed drastically. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.